Nile, the brick under my palms, was wet with old rain and newer blood, and the alley's cold breath carried it straight into my mouth. Copper, rust, fear, sharp as bitten orange peel, leaking from two men who had followed me from the tram. A blind wolf was a dead wolf, my old pack had said when they shoved me beyond the ridge line. Out here, the city didn't care if you were wolf or human. Out here, a woman alone in the dark was enough. My cane had skittered away when the first fist clipped my cheek. It lay somewhere near the trash bins, humming faintly with the vibration of footsteps. My groceries were worse, glass rolling, citrus bursting, the soft collapse of bread. I could already taste the loss, could already hear tomorrow's work becoming impossible without the oils I'd bought. Wallet, the taller one said. His breath whistled through a chipped tooth. Whiskey, cheap mint, panic under the bravado. The other man didn't speak. He crouched in close, and his body heat pressed against my shoulder like a brand. His scent was wrong musk layered over something synthetic, like the sharp bitter edge of suppressant. Human? Werewolf? I couldn't tell. That alone made my ribs tight. I kept my head down so my eyes wouldn't betray me. Blindness wasn't always visible at first glance. Sometimes people thought I was simply avoiding them, as though I could look away from a blow. My fingers found the seam of my coat pocket, not for money. For the tiny glass atomizer I carried, filled with something I'd made for myself, pepper, clove, and a resin that stung the lungs and made eyes stream. Not a weapon that could win, but one that could buy a breath. The second man grabbed my wrist. His pulse was too fast, his skin too hot. He was afraid of me. "You don't have to do this," I said, and listened for the tiny changes in air that meant a lie. My nose didn't just smell skin and sweat. It smelled intent, adrenaline blooming, cortisol turning sour, the metallic bite of decision. He smelled like he'd already decided. I twisted, thumbed the atomizer. The alley filled with spice and burning bark. Both men swore. One staggered back, coughing, his boots scraping puddles. The other kept hold of me, but his grip loosened enough for my elbow to drive up into his ribs. I heard the air leave him with a wet, surprised sound. I lurched toward the street, hands searching for the familiar vibration of passing cars, the high electric whine of the tramline. Noise was light to me, scent was color. I could navigate. Except something stepped into the mouth of the alley. Not a man, not a body, not a presence I could name the way I named everyone else. Nothing. My breath snagged so hard it hurt. My world, always crowded with the living signatures of other beings, soap, shampoo, pheromones, cigarettes, blood sugar, hormones, went abruptly hollow, like a note cut off mid-chord. Someone stood there. I could hear the faint shift of fabric, the minuscule click of a shoe turning on grit. I could feel the air move around a tall shape that blocked the street's distant warmth. But my nose found nothing. No skin, no breath, no wolf, no human. The taller mugger retched and wiped his eyes. "Who the hell?" a sound like a hand closing on silk. Then the mugger's wheeze stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, intentional. My throat went tight. My atomizer was still in my fist, but my fingers had gone numb around it. Nothing can't hurt you, I thought wildly, except it could because it had feet. It'd wait. It had the ability to make a man stop breathing with one quiet motion. The second mugger released my wrist and backed away, still coughing, shoes slipping on the wet bricks. "Man, I don't want," he didn't finish. Another soft sound, like a page turned, like a knife leaving a sheath. The alley held its breath. I stood there, trembling, head angled toward the void, trying to place him the way I placed everyone. By the sweet sour of fear, the pepper of aggression, the musk of dominance. But he was a hole in the world. My mouth dried. In my mind, my old pack's voices rose like a chorus. Blind wolf, dead wolf. And now, blind wolf, and the thing in front of her didn't even exist. "Please," I whispered, hating the tremor that betrayed me. "I'm not worth it." The nothingness took one step closer. Air brushed my face, displaced by a body I couldn't smell. My pulse slammed against my throat, loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. Then a low voice, close, careful, too controlled, cut through me. "Who are you?" Not "give me your money." Not scream quietly. Not the usual language of predators who had already decided. A question. My lips parted, and for a second I couldn't remember my human name. I kept it like armor in this city. "Nile," I said finally, because the truth was safer than a lie when someone could kill with silence. "Nile Vesperine." The void shifted. I heard the tiniest catch in his breath, so small a human wouldn't notice. He was close enough now that I could feel his heat. He was warm, alive, not a ghost. And still no scent. I swallowed. "Don't come any nearer." A pause, then softly, "You can't see." It wasn't asked like an accusation. It was said like a fact he just learned and didn't know where to put. A cold thread slid down my spine. You're not human." He didn't answer. The city noises beyond the alley, car horns, distant laughter, music leaking from an open door, continued like nothing had happened. The world didn't care about the bodies on the bricks. I forced myself to keep my chin up, to keep my hands steady. "If you're going to kill me, do it, but don't touch me first." A sound, not laughter, something smaller, sharper, like disbelief trying to become a smile and failing halfway. "You think I'm here for you?" "You're here," I said, and my voice broke. "And you're nothing." He inhaled. I heard it, a controlled intake, like he was taking stock of a room. "Go." I blinked uselessly into the dark. "What?" "Leave." His voice lowered. "Now." I didn't move fast enough. He was suddenly beside me, and the air changed so abruptly that my skin prickled. A hand, gloved, roughened, caught my elbow. The contact punched a gasp from me. I jerked away on instinct. He didn't tighten, didn't pull, just held like an anchor offered rather than forced. "Street," he said, short. "Left, don't run into traffic." I turned my head toward the alley mouth, toward the hum of the city. My legs were shaking too hard to trust. If I fled, would he change his mind? Would the void follow? My nose searched him again, frantic, desperate. Nothing, but my ears found him. Breath controlled, heart slow, too slow for a man who had just killed. His stillness was terrifying. "Why?" I whispered. His grip on my elbow eased like he was letting go of a thought. "Because I told you." That wasn't an answer, but it was permission. I stepped toward the street, every nerve expecting steel in my back. My boots found the lip of the curb. Wind, car exhaust, hot oil from a nearby food cart, familiar chaos. Behind me in the alley, the void remained. I walked. I didn't run. Running made prey of you. Still, when I reached the corner and the crowd's mixed scents wrapped around me like a dirty blanket, I couldn't stop shaking. And the worst part, the part that made my stomach twist until bile rose, was that I knew, with the certainty of a wolf who lived by senses, that the nothingness had watched me go. Not like a hunter tracking prey. Like a man who had just made a decision that hurt. Rain she smelled like winter pears and crushed green leaves, like paper warmed by lamplight, like a heartbeat held under the tongue. It didn't make sense. I couldn't smell. 5 years ago, they burned my scent out of me in a white room that reeked of antiseptic and bleach. They called it refinement, purification, the necessary cost of becoming what the consortium needed. An alpha who moved through packs like a blade through fog. No pheromones to trace. No signature, no identity, no weakness. I had accepted it the way you accept a knife when you're born to be weaponized. I had not screamed, I had not begged. That would have been wasteful. Afterward, everything inside me had gone quiet. No hunger that wasn't physical. No anger that wasn't useful. No warmth. No pull, not even emptiness. Emptiness implied longing, just function, until her. In the alley, I watched her move with a cane that wasn't in her hand, navigating by sound and air and the sour-sweet map of fear. The muggers didn't realize what she was. They smelled only woman and vulnerability and city sweat. I smelled nothing, of course, and yet my mouth had filled with saliva when she spoke, as if my body remembered something my mind did not. Omega. Blind Omega. An Omega alone in the city was either dead already or dangerous enough to survive. She was trembling when she sprayed them. Not a fighter then, just clever, desperate, proud enough to do it herself. The first mugger's death was almost accidental. His throat opened beneath my hand with the same pressure I used to close a door. Efficient. Soundless. He didn't deserve the time it would take to regret. The second tried to back away. He would have run straight into her later, or into another woman, or into a child. There was no future where he became better. The blade slid in. The body fell, routine. But when I turned toward her, I found myself hesitating. She stood with her head lifted like she could see me by will alone. Her eyes were open but unfocused, pale in the alley's dim light, not tracking the way eyes should. "You can't see," I said, and something in my throat tightened. Why did it matter? It should not have mattered. My orders were clear. A witness had heard the murder. A target had died a week ago in an apartment above a bakery. Another contractor, sloppy, greedy, had taken the job and left sound behind. A breath pattern, a cough, the wet click of a tongue against teeth. The witness was a blind perfumer who lived under a human name and worked in a boutique that catered to the kind of people who paid for secrecy. The consortium didn't like witnesses. They sent me. And now my hands would not move, not because I was moral. The consortium had carved that out of me along with my scent, had sanded my soul into a useful shape. But when I stood close to her, I felt something, not a thought, a sensation, heat behind my ribs, a painful, unfamiliar squeeze like muscles waking from atrophy. "You think I'm here for you," I heard myself say. It came out quieter than intended. Her voice shook. "You're here and you're nothing." Nothing. The word hit like a slap. Not because it was cruel, because it was accurate. I looked down at my gloved hand, at the blade that had ended lives with such ease, and for the first time in years, the sight of it made something twist in my gut. Not guilt, something worse. A desire not to be what I was. I told her to go. She didn't run. She walked. She trusted my instruction enough to not die under the wheels of a car. That trust was irrational. It was a mistake. It should have made me scoff. Instead, I followed her to the corner, staying in the city's noise where cameras blurred and faces didn't matter. I watched her move through the crowd with an odd grace, her head turning slightly as if tasting the world through her nose. I told myself it was surveillance. I told myself I needed to confirm her address, her routine, the best time to end it. But my feet moved because I wanted to stay near her. As if proximity alone could restore something the procedure had taken. She entered a narrow building with a keypad and a cranky old elevator. I waited across the street under a broken awning, rain misting on my hair. My reflection in the shop window looked like a stranger dark coat, collar up, eyes hollow with purpose. A man with no scent could still be seen by cameras, but I'd already dealt with the nearest ones. A small jammer in my pocket fed them a looping minute of empty sidewalk. I waited until her lights came on 2 floors up. Warm yellow square against gray dusk. Then I made the call. The encrypted line clicked once, twice. A voice answered, smooth and bored. "Asset Rain." "She's blind," I said, a pause, irrelevant. "She didn't see anything," I said, and hated the weakness in that argument even as I used it. Another pause. In the silence, I could almost smell the man on the other end, cologne, ambition, blood. She heard, "That's enough. The order stands." My jaw tightened. "Give me 48 hours." For what? "To confirm she is the witness," I lied. I didn't know why I lied. The truth would have been simpler, because I couldn't do it tonight. The man breathed out, annoyed. 24. If you fail, the consortium will send someone else. You know what that means? Yes. It meant I would become nothing even to myself. They would tighten the procedure's hold, cut away whatever fragment of feeling had dared to wake. It meant they would use me until there was no me left to use. The call ended. In the window above, the blind Omega moved past her curtains. Her silhouette was small, shoulders tense. She touched her cheek where the mugger had hit her. My hands flexed. I could still go up there, still finish this, still be what I was. Instead, I found myself stepping toward her building like a man drawn by gravity. Not to kill, to protect. The thought should have disgusted me. It didn't. Nile, my apartment smelled wrong. Not wrong like spoiled milk or gas leak, wrong like an unfamiliar person who had been too close to my belongings. A clean, cold wrongness, as if air itself had been scrubbed. It made my scalp prickle. I locked the door behind me and pressed my back to it, listening. Pipes, distant television, someone's dog scratching at a floorboard, normal city life. I forced myself to breathe slowly through my nose. Lavender from my own hand soap. The lemon wax I used on the wooden counter. The faint animal warmth of my own wolf beneath human skin. And under it, the ghost of the alley. Spice from my atomizer still clung to my coat. I stripped it off with shaking hands and ran my fingers over the fabric, searching for tears. My cheek throbbed. I found swelling, already blooming. I should call the police, my human mind whispered. A laugh rose in me, bitter and soundless. What would I say? 2 men attacked me, and then something killed them with quiet hands, and that something smelled like nothing at all. That I'm a werewolf, officer, and my nose is my eyesight? No. I went to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. The tap's metallic scent mingled with the mineral bite of the city's water supply. I swallowed, breathing through the nausea. My hands found the familiar drawers by memory. Cotton pads, arnica balm, my own little kit of survival. As I dabbed balm onto my cheek, the alley replayed itself in my mind, but not as images. As a sequence of sensations. The mugger's fear like sour wine, the void's silent approach, the way air had moved around him, his voice, low, controlled, almost gentle when it said, "Go." I set the balm down carefully, aligning it with the edge of the counter. Order was how I stayed sane. Then I moved to my workroom. It was a small space, but it was mine. Glass vials lined the shelves like captive jewels. Essential oils sat in dark bottles. Fixatives, tinctures, alcohol bases, blotter strips in a neat fan, mortar and pestle, scale, my notebooks, raised dots and textured tabs for my fingers because I couldn't read ink. In here, blindness was not a flaw. It was an advantage. Sight lied. Smell didn't. Smell told you who was sick before they coughed. Smell told you who wanted you before they touched you. Smell told you when someone's smile was a mask, because their skin would betray them with stress sweat, their breath would sharpen with restraint. Smell had kept me alive since 12, since the fever took my eyes and left the rest of me too sharp to bear. I ran my fingers over the bottles, grounding myself in their shapes. Bergamot, bright, green, clean. Vetiver, damp earth. Amber, warmth that felt like a hand at the small of your back. My phone vibrated on the work table. I froze. Only 3 people had my number. My supplier, my landlord, a client who paid in cash and never asked questions. The vibration stopped, then started again. I picked it up. No caller ID, Unknown number. My thumb hovered over decline. Every instinct screamed to do it, to hide, to curl in the bathroom and lock the door and pretend the world couldn't reach me. But fear smelled like surrender, and surrender attracted wolves. I answered. Hello? Silence. Then, faintly, a breath. Controlled. Familiar, my skin went cold. You followed me, I whispered, a pause. Yes. There was no apology in it, no threat either, just a truth laid flat. My fingers clenched around the phone until the plastic creaked. Why? Another pause, longer this time. To make sure you got home. My mouth went dry. You killed those men. Yes. You were going to kill me too, I said, and hated how certain I sounded. Certainty made it real. Silence again, but not empty. It had weight. Like he was choosing what to say with care that felt unnatural for someone who killed easily. I haven't decided, he said finally. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. Decided what? Whether you die, he said, calm as stone. The honesty should have made me scream. Instead, my wolf, the part of me that understood dominance and danger and the rules packs lived by, went unnaturally still. Predators lied to lull prey. Truth was for equals or for cruelty. He wasn't trying to lull me. He was. Informing me, my nails dug into my palm. Who are you? Not important. That's not an answer. I swallowed, forcing breath into my lungs. Why do you smell like nothing? A sharp inhale. The first crack in his control. I leaned closer to the phone as if the sound could fill the space my nose couldn't. Because they made me, he said. They, a word that implied a chain. I should hang up. I should block the number. I should call the only friend I had, an elderly human woman who owned the boutique downstairs and thought I was an eccentric perfumer with delicate eyes. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Are you outside?" Yes. My heart slammed. I crossed the workroom without thinking, hand skimming the wall until I found the window. I didn't open the curtains. I didn't need to. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and listened to the street below. The city was a chorus. Footsteps. Engines. A bicycle bell. A couple arguing with laughter in their voices. And under it, almost imperceptible, a stillness. A man who wasn't moving. A man who could become a hole in the world. Leave, I said, and it came out ragged. I can't. Why? His answer was so quiet I almost missed it. Because you're the first thing I've felt in years. The words hit me like a hand over my mouth. I stood frozen, phone at my ear, forehead against glass. My apartment suddenly felt too small, too exposed, like a nest built in the open. You're lying, I whispered automatically, because that was safer than believing. No, he said, and then, as if the admission cost him something, I don't know how to lie about that. My nose flared uselessly. I couldn't smell his sincerity. I had to listen for it. His breathing had changed, not faster, deeper, like he was standing in cold air, drawing it in to stay steady. A thought struck me, sharp and irrational. You're an alpha, I said, silence, then, yes, an alpha with no scent. It was wrong the way a missing stare was wrong. Your body knew it before your mind did. If you're here to decide my death, I said, you could do it without calling. Another pause. I wanted to hear you. My pulse skipped. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't sweet. It was predatory in a way that made my skin heat despite my fear, and I hated that my body, Omega body, wolf body, reacted to the idea of being wanted by something dangerous. What do you want? I asked. He exhaled. The sound was almost tired. Tell me what I am, I frowned. What you are, to you, he said. If I smell like nothing, then what am I in your world? My lips parted. I should have said monster. Weapon. Void. But my mind flashed back to the alley, how he told me not to run into traffic, how his grip hadn't tightened, how he had let me go. I swallowed. Your silence. He didn't speak. I forced myself to keep going, because once I started, the words came like they'd been waiting in me. "You're like the moment after thunder," I said, voice soft. "When the air is heavy and everything holds its breath, and you realize you're still alive." My own confession startled me. It felt intimate, like letting someone touch the inside of my ribcage. On the other end of the line, something shifted. A sound barely there, a rough edge in his exhale. Pain, then quieter, "Say it again." My throat tightened. "You're like silence after thunder." A long pause. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, still controlled, but now threaded with something raw that scraped at me. "No one has described me in 5 years." The street noise swelled, then receded. A car passed. A door slammed. I licked my lips, suddenly aware of how close to a cliff I was standing. "Why are you calling me?" "Because someone else will come." My stomach dropped. "Someone else?" "A second assassin," he said, as if it were a weather report. "If I don't complete the assignment, they send another. They won't hesitate." Assignment. The word turned my blood to ice. My voice cracked. I forced it steady. "What did I do?" "You heard something," he said. "A week ago." My mind raced. A week ago. I had been closing the shop late. A client had called, claiming urgent. A delivery to an apartment above the bakery on Rue Mornay. I remembered the stairwell's warm yeast smell. The door left ajar. The sound. A body hitting the floor. A wet cough. I had frozen. I had backed away without breathing. I had listened to someone inside the apartment, calm, unhurried, wash their hands. And then I had fled. I hadn't told anyone. I couldn't. A blind Omega telling police she recognized a killer by the pattern of his breathing sounded like madness. But the consortium, whoever they were, had found out anyway. My fingers went numb. "You were sent to kill me because I heard a murder." "Yes." I pressed my free hand to my mouth to keep from making a sound. Tears gathered behind my useless eyes, hot and pointless. "I'm not," my voice shook. "I'm not part of your world. I'm not in any pack. I make perfume." "I know," he said, and there it was again, that careful tone, like he'd memorized details about me and didn't know what to do with them. "That's why they chose you. No one would believe you." Cold spread through my limbs. "Are you going to protect me?" The question left my lips before I could stop it. In the pause that followed, I heard something that wasn't words. A shift of weight, a slow inhale, decision. "Yes," he said finally. I should have felt relief. Instead, my fear sharpened, because protection from a monster still meant you were in a monster's hands. "How?" I whispered. "I'm coming up," he said, panic flared. "No, don't." "I'm already in the building," he said, and his voice was suddenly closer, not through the phone, but through the thin walls, through the hallway outside my door. My blood turned to ice. I lowered the phone, listening. The elevator groaned, stopped. A soft footfall in the hallway. No scent, only sound. My hand flew to the lock. I checked it twice, 3 times, as if metal could save me from nothingness. A knock sounded gentle, controlled, not a policeman's authority, not a burglar's violence. A man waiting. My voice came out thin. "Go away." "I can't keep you alive from the street," he said, and I hated that the logic of it stabbed straight through my panic. I backed away until my calves hit the work table. My fingers found a glass vial and closed around it like a weapon. "What if you're lying?" I whispered. "I told you what I was sent to do," he said. "That's not a liar's move." My throat burned. He was right. A liar would have said he was a rescuer, would have wrapped danger in kindness. He had wrapped it in truth. The doorknob turned. I hadn't unlocked it. My breath left me in a rush. The lock clicked, then another click, too soft, too quick. He could pick locks. Of course he could. The door opened. Air moved. My nose found nothing. My ears found everything. The faint rub of his coat, the measured rhythm of his steps, the near-silent way he closed the door behind him as if respecting my neighbor's peace. I stood trembling, clutching a vial of bergamot like it could burn him. He stopped a few paces away. "You're holding glass," he said. "Don't come closer." "I won't," he said, and he meant it. I could hear it in his stillness. Silence stretched. My apartment, usually a sanctuary of controlled scents, felt invaded by absence. "You're scared," he said. "Yes," I snapped, then immediately regretted the sharpness. It was too honest, too small. "You killed 2 men and you told me you were deciding if I die. What do you expect me to feel?" Another pause. "I don't know," he said. "I don't have practice." The words were almost human. My grip loosened slightly. "What's your name?" He hesitated. Names were power. Names were handles other people could use to pull you. "Rain," he said at last, and even that sounded like a concession, like he'd given me a piece of himself he wasn't sure he could afford. "Rain," I repeated, testing the shape of it with my mouth like a new note. "Do you have a scent at all, even faint?" "No," he said. "Then how do other wolves react to you?" "They don't," he said. "That's the point." I shivered. A wolf without scent was a wolf without pack, without identity. In pack law, scent was signature. It was lineage. It was proof you belonged to the living. He had none. He was, in a way, exiled worse than I was. "Sit," I said abruptly, because if I didn't give him a command, my body would keep trembling until my bones rattled. "Over there, on the chair." A pause, then the soft scrape of furniture as he complied. He sat. He listened. The fact that he obeyed, a lethal alpha taking instructions from a blind omega, made my skin prickle in a different way. It wasn't dominance. It was respect, maybe. Or curiosity. I set the vial down, hands shaking. I forced myself to breathe in my workroom's scents, amber, alcohol, herbs, anchoring. "Why you?" I asked. "Why would an organization do this to an alpha?" A humorless sound escaped him, not laughter. "Because alphas are easy to weaponize." My throat tightened. "And you let them." Silence. Then, quietly, "I didn't have a choice." The words landed like a bruise. I knew what it meant to be forced out of choice. My pack had smiled while they did it, called it mercy. I pressed my fingers to the edge of the table. What do they want from me besides silence? "You can identify the killer," Rain said. "You heard him," I swallowed. "I heard breathing." "That's enough for you," he said. He was right. I could replay it in my mind like a song I hated but couldn't stop hearing. A steady inhale through the nose, a slight hitch at the end, like a healed rib that still ached in cold weather. The faint rasp of a scarred throat. The way the man swallowed before he spoke to no one at all, as if savoring the moment. I had thought I was safe because I couldn't see his face. I had been wrong. "I can't testify," I whispered. "No one will take me seriously." "They will if the right people hear you," Rain said, and the chill in his voice made me understand that he didn't mean police. "Who are they?" I asked. "The consortium," he said. The word sounded expensive. Clean. Like something that wore suits and smiled over knives. My stomach twisted. "And you're one of them." "I'm theirs," he corrected. The distinction hurt more than the accusation. I rubbed my thumb against my palm, grounding myself. "So what now?" Rain's chair creaked softly as he shifted. "You don't leave this apartment alone." My spine stiffened. "I have to work." "You can work from here," he said. "I make perfume for clients," I snapped. "People come to the shop. They expect me." "You're already dead if you keep your routine," he said, and the flat certainty in his tone made my anger wobble. "The second assassin will not warn you." A second assassin. The phrase wrapped around my throat like hands. "I don't want you here," I whispered, and hated that my voice broke. You're wrong." "I know," he said. A pause. Then, softly, "Tell me what you need." It was such a strange question coming from someone like him that it made my breath catch. I stared toward the sound of him. Toward the emptiness my nose couldn't map. "I need to know where you are," I said before I could stop myself. "In a room, in my life, I need something." Rain's breathing changed. a fraction faster. What kind of something? My cheeks warmed, and I hated it. I hated that my Omega body responded to the proximity of an alpha even when my mind screamed danger. A sound, I said. Move your hand, tap your finger. Something that lets me place you. Silence. Then the faint, rhythmic tap of his finger against his knee. It shouldn't have been comforting. It was, I exhaled shakily. Thank you. Another pause. You're welcome, he said, as if the phrase tasted unfamiliar. My throat tightened. And what do you need? The tapping stopped. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said very quietly, don't look at me like I'm nothing. The words hit like a punch. I couldn't look at him at all. But he didn't mean my eyes. He meant my fear, my disbelief. My instinct to treat him as absence instead of person. My chest hurt. I don't know how, I admitted. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Outside, a siren wailed and faded. Somewhere downstairs, someone laughed. And in my apartment, the void sat in a chair like a man trying to remember how to be human. Rain, her apartment was a museum of scent. Not for me. I still couldn't smell. But I saw the care in it. Dark glass bottles to protect oils from light, labels pressed neatly, tools laid out with precision that bordered on devotion. A blind woman lived here and made order out of chaos the way a wolf made a den out of forest debris. I should have been able to kill her in seconds. Instead, I sat in her chair and tapped my finger like she asked, because she needed a sound to anchor her fear. Because giving it felt like doing something that wasn't violence. The consortium would call it weakness. They'd punish me for it. I watched her hands move through her space with eerie confidence. She never hesitated at corners. She never bumped a shelf. She touched, measured, listened. Omega, blind Omega. Her vulnerability should have made her easy. It made her dangerous in a way I couldn't name because she didn't survive by pretending she was strong. She survived by being precise. When she asked what I needed, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because no one had asked me that since before the procedure. I told her not to treat me like nothing. It came out like a plea. I hated myself for it. Her face turned toward me, and I could feel her attention like a hand hovering inches from my skin. She couldn't see my scars. She couldn't read the deadness in my eyes. She could only hear me. That should have felt like safety. It felt like exposure. My name is Nile, she said again after a while, as if repeating it would make me remember she was real. If you're going to be here, you should know it. I know, I said. I read your file. The words fell like a stone, her shoulders tightened. Her scent, if I could smell it, would have changed. But I heard it instead, the slight hitch in her breath. My file, she repeated. Yes, I said, and kept my voice even. Your work address, your landlord, your medical history, your pack expulsion. The last words were a calculated cruelty. I didn't know why I said them, except that the consortium had taught me to use information like a blade. Nile went still. Then she spoke, soft and vicious with restraint. They wrote me down like an object. Yes, I said, that's what they do. Her laugh was small and broken. And you're okay with it? No, I said before I could stop myself. The admission hung in the air, impossible to retrieve. Nile's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. Then why are you still working for them? Because they own me. Because they can finish what they started and make me into true nothing. Because I don't know how to be anything else. I didn't say any of it. I had spent years swallowing truth until it turned into stone. Instead, I asked, tell me about the murder you heard. Her breath came in slow, controlled pulls. It was above the bakery, Rue Mornay, a week ago. I know where, I said. Tell me what you heard. Nile's head tilted slightly, as if she was turning an invisible object in her hands. A door half open, she murmured. Someone inside moving careful, not rushed. The sound of fabric brushing a counter, then she stopped. I saw her throat move as she swallowed. Then a man coughed, she continued. Wet, like he'd been sick recently or like his lungs were scarred. The cough ended in a rasp. My skin tightened. I knew men like that. I knew the way scars changed breath. Niall's voice lowered. Then someone calm spoke. I didn't hear the words clearly, but I heard his breathing. Through his nose, steady. Like he wasn't afraid of being caught, like he knew no one could touch him. My jaw clenched. That kind of confidence was usually earned by power or bought. Did he have any specific sounds? I asked. She frowned slightly. A swallow before he moved, and a soft click of his tongue on his teeth when he turned, like a habit. I can't explain it, it's just him. You could pick him out in a room, I said. Yes, she whispered, if I heard him breathe. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if it could provide an answer. The consortium's contractor, the one who had killed the original target, had been careless. They needed to erase the witness. They had sent me to do it. And now I was sitting in her chair, listening to her voice like it mattered. Niall shifted, and I heard her fingers moving over something on the table. Glass clinked gently. What are you doing? I asked. Making a note, she said. My own file, the one they don't have. A pause. You keep records? I keep proof, she corrected. If I die, I want something left behind that says I existed. The words hit me in the chest, sharp enough to make me suck in a breath, because I knew what it was to fear erasure. Niall's hands stilled. Do you feel it? She asked suddenly. Feel what? When you're close, she said, voice cautious. I feel cold spots in the air, like the room has a shape that moves. I didn't answer. The procedure had done strange things to my body. Temperature regulation, pheromone output, even the way my skin held heat altered to make me less detectable. Niall's voice softened. And your heartbeat, she continued. It's slow, too slow for someone who kills, too slow for someone who should be afraid. I watched her unsettled. Most people avoided studying me. They looked away instinctively. Predators recognized predators. She couldn't look away. She could only listen, so she listened deeply enough to find the cracks. What do you want from me, Rain? She asked quietly. Really? The question pierced with its simplicity. I could have said I want to keep you alive. I could have said I want to feel again. I could have said I want to burn the consortium down. All of those felt too large, too close to hope, so I gave her the truth I could afford. I want you to stay breathing. A soft sound left her, not quite a sob, not quite a laugh. That's a low bar. It's a bar you're not safe to clear alone, I said. Niall's chin lifted. You don't know what I've survived. I know what your pack did, I said. And, she snapped. I leaned forward, letting my voice go low, letting the alpha in me show without needing scent. And you survived it. That's why you're still here. That's why you sprayed 2 men in the face without hesitation. That's why you didn't scream when you realized I was standing in front of you. Silence. Then, smaller, I almost did. But you didn't, I said. You chose breath. That's strength. Niall's breathing changed. Faster for a moment, then controlled again. She looked down toward her hands, I guessed, though her eyes couldn't track. I'm not used to hearing that. Neither am I thought. The room fell quiet except for the city outside and the faint creaks of the building settling. I checked the time. Night deepening. The window's light now fully artificial. The second assassin could come any time after the 24 hours expired. The consortium might even send him sooner if they sensed hesitation. They had ways of sensing. Do you have suppressants? I asked. Niall stiffened. Why? Because if you go into heat, I said, blunt, you will die. Her breath caught. Even in the city, Omegaverse rules held, and Omega in heat drew attention like blood in water. And a blind Omega alone was a tragedy waiting for a headline no one would read. Niall's voice was thin. I manage it. With what? She hesitated, then said, low-dose human hormone blockers and self-made masks. Masks, I repeated. Perfume, she said sharply, as if daring me to mock her. Scent camouflage. I can make myself smell like a human woman with a thyroid problem and a nicotine habit if I want to. A strange warmth sparked behind my ribs, admiration maybe. Smart. Niall's lips parted as if the word surprised her. I stood, slow, keeping my movements audible. Her head turned immediately toward the sound. I need to check your windows, I said. Your locks, the fire escape. You're moving around my apartment like you own it, she said, voice tight. I'm moving around your apartment like someone who wants you alive, I corrected. Same thing, she muttered, but I heard something else under it, tension threaded with reluctant acceptance. I checked the locks. Cheap. Easy to pick. I made a mental list. I checked the window latches. One was loose. Niall hovered near her work table, hands clenched, as if afraid to touch anything while I moved, afraid I would take offense. Struck me then, she was giving me space. An Omega, small, blind, exiled, was granting an alpha permission to exist in her den. The intimacy of it was sickening and exhilarating. I finished the check and returned to where she could hear me clearly. We need to move you, I said. Niall's head snapped toward me. What? This building is compromised, I said. If the consortium found you once, they can find you again. Your landlord's records, your shop's paperwork, your supplier. You have too many threads. Her jaw tightened. I can't disappear. You can, I said. With me, the words were reckless. I felt them leave my mouth and knew immediately that they changed everything. Niall's breath went shallow. With you? Yes. Where? She whispered. I should have told her a safe house. A place far from cameras, a rural cabin. Somewhere with sightlines and exits. Instead, my mind flashed to her workroom, her bottles, her notes, her life. I don't know yet, I admitted. Niall's laugh was sharp, humorless. So the assassin doesn't have a plan. I have a plan, I said. What is it? I met her unfocused gaze and something in my chest hurt. Keep you alive long enough to find one. Silence. Then, quietly, you're going to get me killed. Yes, I said, because honesty was all I had left. If you stay here. Niall's fingers trembled as they reached for the edge of the table. I can't take my whole workshop. You take what matters, I said. And what matters? She asked. Her voice was suddenly small. The question wasn't about bottles. It was about her worth. I heard it in the way she held her breath, waiting for an answer that might confirm what her pack had taught her. Blind wolf, dead wolf, not worth resources, not worth protection. My throat tightened. You matter, I said, and the words came out rougher than intended. Your hands, your memory, your nose, your stubbornness, a beat. And your voice, I added, quieter. Niall's breath shuddered. Why my voice? Because it makes me feel real, I thought. I didn't say that. Instead, I said, because it tells the truth even when you're scared. Niall swallowed. I heard the tiny click in her throat. Then she nodded, slow. Okay, she whispered, like the word cost her. Okay, tell me what to pack. Relief hit me so hard it was almost pain. I was about to speak when my phone vibrated once, then twice. A coded alert. My blood went cold. Niall's head turned toward the vibration. What is that? I didn't answer fast enough. The alert came again, insistent. Someone was reaching me through the consortium's channel. Someone with authority. I stepped away, keeping my voice low. Stay here. Niall's fingers tightened. Don't leave me alone with nothing. The words sliced through me. I hesitated only a second, then said, I'm still in the room. Her shoulders eased a fraction, as if the promise anchored her. I turned my back and answered the encrypted call. A voice slid into my ear, smooth as oil. Asset Rain. Report. It wasn't the handler from earlier. This was someone higher. My spine tightened. Assignment pending, a soft chuckle. Pending is not a word we accept. I kept my voice flat. Complications. Complications, the voice repeated, amused. Is that what you're calling her? My blood turned to ice. They knew. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. How? We know where you are, the voice said pleasantly. And we know you've grown sentimental. Niall stood motionless across the room, listening without hearing words, reading the tension by sound. The voice continued mild. 24 hours, Rain. If she breathes after that, we will send Severian. The name landed like a blade. Severian, the second assassin, the one who didn't hesitate, the one who enjoyed the work. My vision narrowed. Understood, I said. The call ended. I stood there for a moment, phone pressed to my ear, hearing nothing but the city's distant hum. Niall's voice reached me, quiet and terrified. Who is Severian? I lowered the phone slowly. In my chest, something that might have been fear, real fear, not tactical calculation, woke fully for the first time in years. The man you can't afford to meet, I said. Niall's breath hitched. And you can stop him. I looked at her, blind eyes lifted toward me, and realized the truth like a punch. I could stop him. But the cost would be my last tie to the only structure I'd ever known. It would be treason. War. Yes, I said anyway. I can. Niall's fingers curled into fists. Then do it. A pause, then barely audible. Rain. What? Her voice softened, and it hurt more than anger. If you betray them for me, what will they do to you? I swallowed, tasting metal. Make me nothing, I thought. Make me emptier than I already am. I met her gaze, even though she couldn't see it, and forced my voice steady. They already did their worst. Niall took a shaky breath. That's a lie. I didn't answer. Because for the first time, I didn't know if it was. Niall, he didn't smell like fear. He didn't smell like anything. But I could hear it now, faintly, in the way his breath scraped just a fraction deeper, the way his silence thickened around the edges. Rain was afraid, not of dying, of becoming less than he already was. My hands shook as I began to pack. Not clothes, those were easy. I shoved sweaters and underwear into a bag by texture and memory. The hard part was my work. A perfumer's life wasn't bottles. It was the ability to rebuild the world from invisible pieces. I touched my shelves like I was saying goodbye to friends. Bergamot, vetiver, labdanum, jasmine absolute, cedar, black pepper, ambroxan. Each one had a place in my mind like a street on a map. I heard Rain moving through my apartment, checking corners, peering out the peephole, the controlled predator rhythm of him. He didn't pace like an anxious man. He moved like a guard on a wall. And yet there was something else in it now, an urgency that hadn't been there earlier. Severian will come here, I said, and my own voice sounded too calm, like I'd already accepted it. Yes, Rain said. He won't be able to smell you either, I said, thinking aloud because my mind worked in rules. So he's like you. No, Rain said, and the single word cut clean. I paused with a vial in my hand. How is he different? Rain's answer was quiet and vicious. He still has a soul. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't know how a man could speak like that about himself and still be standing. I chose 2 oils I couldn't live without and tucked them into a padded case. Then my fingers found my notebook. Raised dots under my fingertips, my own shorthand, my proof. I slid it into my bag like a heartbeat. Where will we go? I asked. Rain didn't answer immediately. Then I heard him open my front door, just a crack to listen, to feel the hallway. He closed it again softly. We go to your shop, he said finally. I froze. What? No. You have a back room, he said. How do you know that? I've been watching, he said, and there was no shame in it, only necessity. Your shop has better locks, better cameras, more exits, and it's not tied to your landlord's private records the way this apartment is. My pulse slammed. My shop is full of people during the day. It's night, he said. We move now. I swallowed. My chest ached. I didn't want to go outside again. I didn't want to step into the city with a void beside me, a man who could kill with silence and had enemies with sharper knives. But staying meant dying. I slid the bag strap over my shoulder with trembling hands. Okay, I whispered, hating how small I sounded. Rain moved closer. I felt the air change as his body entered my space. "I'm going to take your elbow," he said, voice low. "I'll guide you down the stairs. The elevator is too loud." My skin prickled where his hand hovered. "Don't," I swallowed. "Don't drag me." "I won't," he promised, and then his gloved fingers closed gently around my elbow. The touch was careful, almost reverent. My Omega body reacted anyway, heat sliding through my veins, humiliating and immediate. And Alpha's proximity was a language my instincts understood even when my mind screamed. Rain must have felt it too. He went very still. "Are you?" His voice roughened. He stopped. "I'm fine," I lied. His grip tightened a fraction, not painful, just grounding. "If you go into heat, tell me." I let out a shaky breath that might have been a laugh. "Tell you so you can what? Lock me in a room?" "Yes," he said simply. The bluntness of it should have offended me. Instead, it made my eyes sting with tears. "Okay," I whispered. We moved. The hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's fried onions from dinner. Familiar. My building was full of humans who didn't know there was a blind Omega walking past their doors with an Alpha assassin guiding her. Rain's steps were nearly silent. Mine sounded too loud. We took the stairs. Rain kept his hand on my elbow, his body close enough that I could sense him without scent, heat, displaced air, the subtle vibration of his footfalls. On the third-floor landing, voices drifted from behind a neighbor's door, laughter, a couple arguing about a movie. Normal life, inches away from my terror. The street door opened with a soft groan. Cold air hit my face, carrying exhaust, damp stone, the sweet smoke of a vendor's roasted nuts somewhere down the block. And under it, a new smell, not rain, not nothing, something sharp and clean like antiseptic poured over blood. My stomach dropped. Rain paused so abruptly I nearly collided with him. His hand tightened on my elbow. "Inside," he said, low and urgent. "What?" I started. He didn't answer. He pulled me back, quick but controlled, and the door swung shut. For a moment we stood in the building's entryway, my heart pounding loud enough to drown the street's noise. I inhaled again, trying to confirm the scent through the door. It was faint, but there. Antiseptic, cold metal, a hint of smoke, not a mugger, not a random passerby, a wolf trained to kill. My throat went tight. "Severian?" Rain's voice was very quiet. "Not him. Worse." "Then who?" I whispered. Rain's breath came shallow for the first time. "A watcher." My mouth went dry. "They sent someone already." "Yes," he said. I felt the world tilt. "We can't go to the shop if they're watching." Rain's jaw clenched. I heard it in the slight grind of teeth. "We can't go anywhere if we freeze." I swallowed down panic, tasting bile. "What do we do?" Rain's voice dropped into something like a growl, restrained and lethal. "We make them think you're still upstairs." My skin went cold. "How?" Silence. Then his hand left my elbow. The sudden absence made me sway. "I'm going to move," he said, very controlled. "Stay against the wall, don't make noise." I pressed my back to the entryway wall, fingers digging into peeling paint. I listened. Rain moved with barely a whisper of sound. The door clicked again, opened a crack. Street noise spilled in, then stopped, cut off. A few seconds passed. Then footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, pausing near our building. A faint, almost inaudible exhale, as if someone were scenting the air. I held my breath. My nose, my only sight, tried to see through the door with smell alone. The antiseptic cold scent grew stronger. The watcher was close. Then Rain did something I didn't expect. He spoke, loud enough to carry through the door, his voice pitched to sound like a man on a phone call, casual, impatient. "Yeah, third floor, apartment 12. She's alone." My blood turned to ice. He was baiting them. My fingers clenched until my nails bit skin. I wanted to grab him, to stop him, to scream at him that he was going to get us both killed. But I stayed silent because he told me to. Outside, the footsteps shifted. A pause. Then they moved away, retreating down the sidewalk, as if the watcher had just received confirmation and was leaving to report. The antiseptic scent faded, replaced by exhaust and damp stone again. Rain closed the door softly. He crossed to me, and I felt the air change with his approach. "That was insane," I whispered, voice shaking. "You just told them where I live." "I told them what they already know," he murmured. "And I gave them a reason to leave the door." My throat tightened. "So they'll come back." "Yes," he said. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to cling to him. I wanted to vomit. Instead, I whispered, "When?" "Soon," Rain said. "Not tonight. They'll report first. But now we know we're not moving unseen." My body trembled with helpless fury. "Then how do we move?" Rain's voice softened just slightly. "With noise," I frowned, confused. "Noise. We don't try to be invisible," he said. "We become ordinary, a couple leaving for a late-night errand, a man walking his girlfriend home." Girlfriend. The word hit like a spark in dry grass. My cheeks heated and I hated myself for it. "I'm not, I know," he said, quick. "It's a cover, but it will keep you alive." I swallowed, throat tight. "So you'll pretend I'm yours?" Silence. Then, rough and quiet, "If it keeps them from taking you, yes." My heart pounded so hard it made me dizzy, because even through fear, my Omega instincts heard something in his voice that wasn't just strategy, possessiveness. Not cruel, not controlling, protective, desperate. I licked my lips, tasting salt. "Okay," I whispered. Rain exhaled slowly, as if he'd been holding his breath. Then he said, close, "We go now. And if anyone touches you, you don't speak." "You let me speak." My hands shook. "You're going to get into a fight." "Yes," he said, calm. "And if you die," I whispered. A pause. Then so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "Then you run." I laughed once, sharp and broken. "I'm blind." Rain's hand found my elbow again, gentler than before. "Then you follow my voice." For a moment, standing in the building's entryway with the city waiting outside like an ocean, I believed him. Not because I trusted killers. Because in the emptiness of his scent, in the terrifying absence that made him a hole in my world, his voice had become a line I could hold. We stepped out. Cold air hit my face again, and somewhere in the city's palette of smells, antiseptic waited like a knife held behind a back. Rain, the watcher's scent, was wrong. Niall could smell it, but I couldn't. That was the first brutal reminder that my emptiness was not an advantage in every fight. Without scent, I moved unseen through packs. Without scent, I was blind in a world that hunted by smell. Niall was my eyes in that way, and I hated the thought of needing anyone. I hated it the way a starving man hates bread because it reveals hunger. But I needed her. The night wrapped around us as we walked, my hand light on her elbow, my body positioned between her and the street. People passed, laughing, smoking, talking too loudly. Their lives brushed against us and moved on. Niall's breathing was tight. She was listening to everything. So was I, every footstep that matched ours. Every pause too long, every car that slowed near the curb. I kept my face relaxed, my posture easy, just another man guiding a woman through the city. If anyone watched, I wanted them bored. Niall's shop was 8 blocks away, too far to sprint, close enough to be a trap. Halfway there, Niall's head turned slightly. Her fingers tightened on my sleeve. "What?" I murmured. Her voice barely moved her lips. "Someone's following. Human, but wearing suppressant." She swallowed. "And another one who smells like clean metal." My blood cooled, sharpening, 2 tails. One human-shaped with chemical cover, one trained. The consortium didn't send Severian yet. They sent a net. I adjusted our path without breaking stride, steering Niall toward a busier street with more light, more witnesses. Packs avoided public violence. So did the consortium usually. Usually, Niall's whisper trembled. They're close. I know, I murmured. Keep walking. Her breath hitched. Rain, I can't smell you. If you let go, I won't, I said. We reached the intersection and the traffic light changed. A crowd surged across with us. I used the bodies as cover, slipping Niall through like water through fingers. The tail stayed with us. Niall's grip tightened. Then she whispered, barely audible, he's calling someone. The metal sent one. I can hear his throat click. My jaw clenched. They were coordinating. I made a decision. We wouldn't make it to the shop without confrontation. Not with two tails tightening. I guided Niall into the recessed entrance of a closed cafe, pretending to check directions. The smell of stale pastries and bleach clung to the doorway. Niall leaned close, her voice a thread. What are you doing? Changing the story, I murmured. I let my hand slide from her elbow to her waist, just enough to sell the illusion, just enough to keep her close. Her body tensed, then steadied, as if she chose to accept it. Heat rose from her skin. It hit me like a wave. Not scent, something else. A primal awareness, a pull that wasn't smell-based, rooted deeper than chemistry. My chest tightened painfully. I forced my voice light, like a lover teasing. You're freezing. Should have worn the other coat. Niall's fingers curled into my sleeve, playing the part, voice soft. You didn't tell me we'd be out. Her acting was too good. Or maybe it wasn't acting at all. Maybe it was fear wearing the shape of intimacy because intimacy was the only cover we had. A man passed behind us. I saw him in the cafe's dark window reflection. Average height, hood up, hands in pockets, face turned away. Ordinary, except his posture was too controlled. The second tail was further back, leaning against a lamppost, pretending to scroll on his phone. I couldn't smell their intent, but I could read it in the stillness of their bodies. I lowered my mouth near Niall's ear. When I tell you to move, you run inside the next open door you find. You call the shop owner downstairs, the human woman. Niall's breath hitched. Mired. Yes, I said, say you're being followed. And you, she whispered, I'll draw them away. Niall went rigid. No. It's the best, no, she hissed, and the fury in the whisper startled me. You promised. You said you'd keep me breathing. Don't say that like it doesn't include you. The words struck somewhere tender and unarmored. For a second, I couldn't speak. Then I heard footsteps, deliberate, approaching. The hooded man had decided to close in. Niall's head turned slightly. Left, she whispered. He's left. My body moved before thought. I stepped left, placing myself between her and the approaching threat, my hand still at her waist, keeping the couple's illusion while my other hand slid under my coat to the knife strapped there. A voice spoke from behind, close. Cute. The clean metal scent too close. They had flanked us. I kept my posture relaxed, like I hadn't heard, like I was about to laugh and keep walking. Niall's fingers tightened convulsively. I felt her fear as a tremor through my arm. I didn't turn. I didn't give them my eyes. Keep moving, I murmured to Niall, still in that lover's tone. Now, she hesitated. I squeezed her waist, not hard, just urgent. Niall moved 2 steps, then 3 into the flow of pedestrians. The man behind me said louder, Hey, your girl dropped something. A cheap trick. A way to make her stop, to make me look, to create a gap. Niall didn't stop. Good. I turned then, slow, letting my face show mild annoyance. The man at the lamppost smiled like a customer. His scent, if I could smell it, would have been poison. His eyes were too calm. Rain, he said, conversational. We had hoped you'd be professional. I knew him, not by smell, by voice. Marcellin, a handler who liked to pretend he was gentle. My jaw tightened. You shouldn't be here. Marcellin's smile widened. And yet, here we are. The hooded man drifted closer, hands still in pockets. Not a civilian, a blade and cloth. You were given 24 hours, Marcellin said, but we were curious. We wondered what kind of Omega could make a refined alpha hesitate. My blood went cold. They weren't just retrieving a witness. They were testing me. Marcellin continued, voice soft. Come back, leave her. We can adjust you again, make it easier. Adjust. Erase. My fingers flexed around my knife beneath my coat. Niall's scent was still absent to me, but her presence, her heat, her voice, the way she had said don't say that like it doesn't include you, burned in my mind. I'm not coming back, I said. Marcellin's eyes narrowed. That's disappointing. The hooded man moved. I moved faster. The knife flashed out, not to kill yet, but to open space. The hooded man's hand came out of his pocket with steel of his own, and metal met metal with a hiss that cut through the street noise. People screamed. Someone shouted. The crowd began to scatter. Marcellin stepped back, too calm, pulling a gun from his coat as if the chaos was an inconvenience. I heard Niall, somewhere ahead, gasp my name. Her voice was a hook in my spine. I had chosen war, and the first blow had already landed. Niall's screams tore the air open, sharp and sour with adrenaline, and the street's scents shattered into 1,000 frantic directions. Spilled coffee, hot rubber, cold rain, the bite of gun oil from somewhere near the lamppost. I stumbled forward into the thinning crowd, my hand groping for the familiar anchor of Rain's sleeve, and finding only empty air. Empty air was normal for him. This wasn't. My breath caught so hard my throat burned. The sidewalk vibrated under running feet. A woman shoved past me, perfume blooming, vanilla and panic, then vanished. I angled my head, listening for the sound that mattered, for the slow heartbeat I'd begun to recognize as his. Metal hissed again. 2 blades kissing. A gun clicked. My knees went weak. The city became a cavern of echoes, and I was a blind animal in the open, every instinct screaming for den, for cover, for someone's hand on my elbow. Rain, I called, and hated the way his name cracked on my tongue like a prayer. A deep voice, smooth, amused, answered from behind me. She's loud for someone who wants to live. My blood turned to ice. The antiseptic clean scent I'd noticed before was closer now, laced with something sterile and expensive, the smell of a man who washed his hands after violence and called it virtue. I spun toward the voice, useless eyes wide, caneless hands raised like that could stop a bullet. You're Marcellin, I whispered, because Rain had said the name earlier and my mind clung to any handle it could find. A soft laugh. And you're the little perfumer, how charming. A hand brushed my shoulder, not quite touching, the way predators test boundaries. Do you know what I find fascinating? You can't see his face. You can't smell him, and yet you still reached for him. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. Somewhere to my left, metal struck metal again, followed by a grunt, Rain's, low and controlled like pain forced into silence. My body tried to run toward the sound. Marcellin's voice stayed close. Don't. The word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I went still, trembling, because his calm was the kind that came from certainty. He had men, he had weapons, he had plans, but I had something too. My nose flared, searching through chaos for patterns, for truths. Marcellin's breath was steady. Too steady for a man in danger. His skin smell, faint, expensive soap, was layered over a suppressant that wasn't cheap. Under it was something else, something I'd learned to fear because it reminded me of pack elders who smiled while they exiled you. Controlled dominance, polished until it looked like civility. He leaned closer. Tell me, he murmured, almost kindly. How does he smell to you? Does he smell like love yet? My stomach lurched. He doesn't smell, I said, voice shaking. Marcellin hummed. That's the point. Our refined assets are exquisite. No trace, no mess, just results. The phrase "our refined assets" made bile rise in my throat. And then, like lightning through fog, memory struck. the apartment above the bakery a week ago, the wet cough, the steady breathing, the swallow before movement, the soft click of tongue on teeth. Marcellin swallowed. The sound was tiny, normal, human, and yet it sliced straight through me because it matched the memory like a key fits a lock. My skin went cold. It wasn't just that he was here now. It was that he had been there then. "You," I whispered. Marcellin paused. "Me." I could hear his smile in the shape of his breath. What a curious tone. "You were in that apartment," I said, louder now, the words tumbling out with horror and certainty. "Rue Mornay, above the bakery. You killed him." Silence snapped tight, a cord pulled to breaking. Then Marcellin laughed, softer, no warmth in it. "Oh, sweetheart." His hand closed around my wrist with sudden firmness. "You really are as inconvenient as your file suggested." My bones jolted with fear. I tried to yank free, but he was stronger than he sounded. His grip was clean, surgical. I opened my mouth to scream. A body collided with Marcellin. The grip on my wrist broke. Air exploded with the sound of impact, cloth tearing, a grunt, a sharp exhale as someone hit pavement. Rain's voice cut through the chaos, low and lethal. "Run." I froze because he wasn't close enough to touch, and without touch he was only sound in the dark. "Now," he snarled, and that more than anything made my legs obey. I ran, not gracefully, not bravely. I ran like a blind wolf who knew she was prey. My boots slapped the pavement. My hands reached out and found a wall, then a shop window, then a metal pole slick with rain. I followed the city's edges the way I followed scent trails, breath ripping in and out of my lungs. Somewhere behind me, a gun fired. The crack made me flinch so hard I nearly fell. People screamed again. Footsteps thundered. A car horn blared. My world narrowed to one goal, a door, an entrance, a place with walls. Rain had said my shop. I didn't know if I could reach it. But I knew if I stopped, Marcellin's clean hands would find my throat. I forced air into my lungs and followed the street's perfume map, counting intersections by the change in wind and exhaust. One corner with roasted nuts, the next with damp stone and cigarette smoke, the next with a florist's midnight sweetness, even through a closed gate. My shop was near the river, where the air always carried algae and cold metal from the water. I tasted that metal now, and relief hit so hard it made me dizzy. A door chimed as I stumbled inside. Warmth wrapped around me, wood polish, old fabric, the familiar ghost of 1,000 perfumes layered into the walls, my sanctuary. And then a voice, sharp with alarm, sliced through me. "Niall Myert." Her scent was always comforting, hand cream, black tea, the faint smoke of clove cigarettes she swore she'd quit. I reached toward it like a drowning woman reaching for a rope. "Myert," I gasped. "Lock it, please." "What happened?" she demanded, already moving. I heard the bolt slide, the chain catch. "Your face, Niall, your cheek." "There's a man," I panted. "Two men, they're coming." Myert swore, a hard human sound. "Do I call the police?" "No," I said immediately, and my voice broke. "Not police." My hands shook as I grabbed the counter's edge. "Hide me, please." Myert hesitated only a second. Then her voice dropped, tight and practical. "Back room, now, and don't argue." She guided me by the shoulder, not gentle, but decisive, through the familiar corridor into the storage space behind my workroom. The scent changed, cardboard, alcohol, dust, the concentrated heart of my craft. Myert pressed something into my hands, my cane. "I found it downstairs earlier," she said, breathless. "You left it at the boutique. Why didn't you tell me?" "There wasn't time," I whispered. A thud sounded outside, near the front door. My blood turned to ice. Myert went still. I could hear her listening, the way humans listened when they didn't know they were about to become prey. Another thud. Someone testing the door. Myert's whisper was fierce. "Who is it?" I don't know, I lied, because how do you tell a human there are wolves without scent and men who kill like paperwork? Someone dangerous. Meyert's hand squeezed my shoulder, surprisingly steady. Stay here. She moved toward the workroom door. I caught her sleeve. Meyert, don't. She froze. Niall, this is my shop too. Throat tightened. In the past, I had tried not to need anyone because needing was how packs decided you were a burden. But Meyert was not pack. Meyert was choice. I'm sorry, I whispered. Her voice softened for half a heartbeat. Don't be sorry, be quiet. Footsteps sounded in the boutique. My heart slammed. I inhaled, searching. A flood of unfamiliar scents rushed in, rain-soaked wool, gun oil, suppressant. And under all of it, clean antiseptic, like someone had carried a hospital into my shop. Marcellin, my stomach turned. He spoke from the front, voice smooth, pleasant, like a man entering a boutique with money. Good evening. We're looking for a young woman, blind, dark hair, bruised cheek. Meyert's voice, tight but controlled, answered. We're closed. Oh, I know, Marcellin murmured. But you see, it's urgent. The air shifted as bodies moved deeper into the shop. I backed farther into the storage room, cane clutched uselessly, my mouth full of blood-tasting fear. Then another scent threaded through the doorway, one I hadn't expected. Nothing. The void entered behind them. Rain, a sound low, controlled left my throat. Relief hurt. It hurt because it meant I had started to attach my survival to a man who could become absence at will. Meyert's breath caught. Who? Rain didn't answer her. His voice cut through the boutique like a blade. Marcellin. Marcellin's tone stayed amused. Rain, there you are, you're bleeding. Rain's breathing was different now, deeper, rougher, the faint rasp of pain tucked behind discipline. He had been hit, maybe cut, maybe shot. My hands shook with helplessness. Marcellin sighed. This is tedious, hand her over. Rain's voice was very quiet. No, a pause. Marcellin's smile sharpened, I could hear it. Then you'll watch. A gun cocked. Meyert made a sound, small, human, and my heart broke because she didn't understand the rules of this world, and the rules were about to crush her anyway. I didn't think, I moved. I stepped out of the storage room, cane raised like a spear, and shouted toward Rain's voice. It's him. Silence snapped. Marcellin's tone dropped just a fraction. Excuse me. My whole body trembled, but my nose was a compass, and it pointed straight at him. Rue Mornay, I said, voice shaking and loud. Above the bakery, your breathing, your swallow, the click of your tongue. Marcellin's pleasantness curdled. You're imagining things. No, I snapped, and the word came out like a growl I didn't know I had. I know you. For the first time, I smelled something new on him. Not antiseptic, fear. It was faint, threaded under his control, but it was real. Rain's voice lowered. You killed the target. Marcellin's laugh was brittle. You think that matters? It matters, Rain said, and there was something in his tone that made my skin prickle, an alpha deciding, not hesitating. Because it means you're not just a handler. Marcellin's voice turned cold. I'm whatever the consortium needs. A gun fired. The sound was deafening in the boutique. Glass shattered. A display fell. Meyert screamed. I flinched so hard my teeth clicked. Rain moved. I couldn't see him, but I heard him, air slicing, fabric snapping, the thud of bodies colliding. Another gunshot cracked, closer, then a grunt cut off mid-sound. Someone hit the floor hard enough that the wood trembled under my boots. Marcellin cursed, the smooth mask breaking. Rain spoke through harsh breath. Niall, back now. My legs finally obeyed. I stumbled backward into the workroom, heart battering my ribs. Behind me, Meyert sobbed. What is happening? I grabbed her wrist. Come with me. I can't, she choked. You can, I snapped and dragged her toward the back exit that led into the alley behind the shop. My fingers found the familiar latch. I yanked it open. Cold air and river stink rushed in. Move, I whispered. shoving Myert out first. A heavy footfall behind us. Rain's voice, close now, strained, hit my ear. Go. I turned toward him, reaching into emptiness. My fingers brushed his coat, then his arm, warm, real, bleeding iron scent blooming faintly where his blood met air, the only scent of him the world would ever have. My throat tightened. You're hurt. Later, he rasped. Run. We ran into the alley. Behind us, in my shop, my den, another crash of glass, and Marcellin's voice barking orders that sounded less like confidence now and more like rage. Myert stumbled, panting, voice high with panic. Niall, who are those men? My voice shook. People who don't let witnesses live. Myert swore again, hard. Then where do we go? Rain answered, low and immediate. Down the river walkway, under the bridge. I gripped his sleeve with one hand and Myert's with the other, a chain of survival. We moved through damp stone and algae smell, through the hollow echo under the bridge where the city's lights didn't reach. Darkness meant nothing to me, but it meant something to them. Rain was blind in a different way, and whoever followed us might be too. Rain Niall's accusation had struck Marcellin like a blade slipped between ribs. I hadn't expected it. I'd known she could hear the killer, could identify breath, but watching her weaponize that truth, watching her stand in her own shop, shaking and furious, and point at a man who had power over both of us, had lit something hot and savage in my chest. Pride, I realized with a jolt. Not possessive pride, not mine, pride in her. It felt like a fracture in the procedure's dead shell, a crack letting something living bleed through. Marcellin's gun had grazed me near the shoulder. The pain was manageable, the blood warm beneath my shirt. The worst wound was the knowledge that the consortium had chosen to involve themselves directly, which meant their patience was thinning. Under the bridge, the air turned wet and metallic. The river whispered nearby. Footsteps overhead thudded like distant drums. Myert, human, terrified, kept stumbling. Niall kept her upright with a grip that was surprisingly strong for someone so slight. Niall held my sleeve with the same stubborn determination she'd used to survive exile, as if she could anchor herself to nothingness and make it real. Behind us, the city breathed. I listened for pursuit. The problem with being scentless was that I had spent years relying on invisibility. Now I had to rely on sound, on sight, on Niall's nose. It made me tense in ways I didn't like. Niall whispered, breath ragged, "Someone's coming." I stopped. "How many?" she inhaled, nostrils flaring. "Two. One is Marcellin, the other," her voice tightened. "The other smells like cold smoke and clean knives." Cold smoke. That was Severian's signature, according to whispers in the consortium corridors. Not because he was scentless, he wasn't, but because he used a particular cleansing agent that clung to his clothes and erased traces of blood. A man who liked his work tidy. My blood cooled. "He's early." Myert made a strangled sound. "Who's early?" Niall's hand tightened on my sleeve. Severian. I heard the way Myert's breath hitched, the human brain trying to process names that meant nothing and yet carried death in our tones. I forced my voice calm. "Myert, do you have anywhere secure? A basement? A cellar?" Myert panted. "My cousin owns a wine bar 2 streets from here. There's a storage cellar, steel door, keypad. But nothing," I snapped, sharper than intended. "We go." We moved fast along the river walkway, footsteps splashing through shallow puddles, the bridge's shadow swallowing us. Above, cars passed, their vibrations rolling through the concrete like distant thunder. Niall stayed close enough that I could feel her warmth through my coat when she stumbled. My body reacted to it, a painful tightening low in my abdomen that had nothing to do with injury. A memory of instincts I'd been trained to ignore. Omega near, protect, anchor, claim. The procedure had tried to kill those impulses. Niall was resurrecting them by existing. A figure stepped into our path. I saw him first as a shape, tall, still, posture too relaxed for a civilian under a bridge at night. Then the faint glint of something in his hand. Knife. Severian. Nile stopped so abruptly she bumped into my shoulder. Myert sucked in a breath. The man spoke, voice mild, almost bored. "Asset Rain, you're making this difficult." I stepped forward, placing myself between him and Nile by instinct older than any procedure. Severian. He tilted his head, as if listening to my tone more than my words. "You're bleeding, and you brought a human, sloppy." Myert whimpered, then caught herself and went silent, breath shaking. Nile's fingers trembled on my sleeve. "Rain," she whispered, and there was terror in it, but also something else, resolve, as if she refused to be a passenger in her own escape. Severian smiled faintly. "The Omega goes with me. The human is irrelevant." Nile's breath hitched, fury sparking. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Severian's gaze flicked toward her voice. "You have spirit." "That's unfortunate." He moved. So did I. The first clash was fast, too fast for Myert to react, too fast even for Nile to parse by sound. Steel met steel with a violent hiss. Severian's knife was smaller than mine, but his wrist was quicker, his angle precise. He wasn't trying to win a duel. He was trying to get past me. He feinted toward my ribs, then slipped left, toward Nile's voice. Nile inhaled sharply. "Left." I pivoted on the word, catching his arm with my forearm, feeling muscle and bone, feeling the controlled strength of an assassin who had never needed to be the strongest because he was always the cleanest. I drove my shoulder into him, forcing him back. Severian laughed softly, breath steady. "So the blind Omega is your eyes now." Nile's voice shook, but it didn't break. "And you're in the dark too." Severian's smile sharpened. "Not like him." His free hand snapped out, tossing something small. It hit the ground and cracked. A smell exploded, chemical, bitter, burning the back of the throat. Myert coughed, choking. Nile gasped, eyes watering uselessly. Scent bomb, I realized, something to overload a wolf's nose. Except I didn't have one. For once, my emptiness was advantage. But Nile's world was scent. I heard her stagger, heard her breath turn ragged, heard the panic as her palette of smells became a wall of pain. "Nile," I barked. Severian used the moment, slipping past my guard with a smooth, cruel efficiency, blade angling toward her. I moved without thought. I threw myself between them. The knife sank into my side, hot, sharp, clean. Pain flared white. I didn't fall. I grabbed Severian's wrist with both hands and twisted until bone creaked. He hissed not from pain, but from surprise. Because a refined asset wasn't supposed to sacrifice himself. I drove my forehead into his face. Cartilage snapped. Severian stumbled back, swearing softly. Nile's voice came, strained, thick with tears and chemical burn. I hear 2 hearts." Her words were a lifeline in the poison haze. I forced my breathing steady, despite pain, despite blood. "Tell me." "One beats steady," she gasped. "The other," she coughed violently. "The other is afraid on the left. Afraid." A predator afraid was the most dangerous thing in the world, because fear made men sloppy. Severian's heart was on the left of me now. I attacked left. I drove my blade toward where his body had shifted, following Nile's direction, trusting her hearing the way she trusted my shield. Steel met flesh. Severian grunted, a sound of genuine pain. He grabbed my arm, trying to redirect the blade away from something vital, and in that contact I felt his hands, cold, steady, almost clinical. He leaned close, breath hot with the chemical stench. "You'll die for her," he murmured, astonished. "Yes," I rasped, and realized it was true. Then I did the only thing I could. I used my weight, my height, my alpha strength, and drove him backward into the concrete pillar beneath the bridge. His skull hit stone. He went limp for half a heartbeat enough. I yanked my blade free and hit again lower where ribs parted. Severian's breath left him in a wet exhale. He slid down the pillar, eyes unfocused, blood dark against damp concrete. The chemical stink still burned the air. Myert sobbed, coughing. Niall sank to her knees, hands pressed to her face, shaking. I staggered, pain blooming in my side, warm blood soaking my shirt. Footsteps sounded above us, distant, unaware. Niall's voice broke. "Rain, are you?" "I'm here," I forced out. "I'm still here." Her hands reached out blindly, found my coat, clutched it with desperate strength. "Don't go quiet," she whispered. "Please." I swallowed hard. Then behind us, another voice floated into the underpass, smooth, clean, furious. "Severian, Marcellin." My blood went cold again. This wasn't over. Niall, the chemical stink, coated my tongue and throat like poisoned syrup. My nose, my sight, was a screaming wound. Every scent had become pain. Algae, wet stone, blood, Myert's fear, Rain's blood, iron hot and intimate. And over it all the harsh, bitter cloud Severian had thrown like a blindfold. I clung to Rain's coat because it was the only stable thing left. Then Marcellin's antiseptic clean presence slid into the underpass like a scalpel. His voice was too calm for what he must have seen. "Rain, Omega," I shivered. Rain's breath was rough near my ear. "Stay behind me." I laughed once, broken. "I'm already behind you." Marcellin sighed as if we were inconveniencing him. "You were always disappointing, Rain, even before refinement." A soft click gunned safety. Myert made a small sound of terror. My stomach dropped. If Marcellin shot, we had nowhere to run. The underpass was a tunnel, darkness, echoes, but darkness was mine. Not because I could see in it, because I could listen. Because Marcellin's body, unlike Rain's, existed in scent, in breath, in the tiny betrayals of fear and excitement. And now, beneath his antiseptic mask, I smelled something sharp and wrong. Not fear, excitement. He liked this. My mouth went dry. "You're going to kill us." Marcellin chuckled. "Yes." Rain's body tensed, the air shifting around him with predatory readiness despite injury. Marcellin continued, conversational. "The Omega is valuable only as a loose end. But you, Rain," his tone warmed with cruelty. "You are valuable as an example." My hands trembled. My fingers found the edge of my bag strap. Inside was my notebook, my proof, useless against a gun. Unless my mind raced, grasping for the one weapon I had always trusted, scent. I couldn't see Marcellin, but I could smell him. His antiseptic cleanliness wasn't natural, it was built, layered, maintained, which meant it could be broken. My work bag, my survival, held small glass vials. And one of them was not perfume at all, but solvent, high-proof alcohol used for dilutions. Flammable, harsh, loud on the nose. I fumbled inside the bag with shaking hands. Rain whispered urgent, "Niall, what are you doing?" "Trust me," I rasped, and hated the desperation in it. My fingers found the vial, smooth glass, small enough for my palm. I thumbed the cap, praying it would twist fast. Marcellin's steps approached, measured, confident, gun held steady. "You're bleeding," he told Rain, almost kindly. "You won't last." He wasn't wrong. I could smell Rain's blood now, stronger, blooming through his shirt. I got the cap off. And then I did something stupid and brave and purely emotional because logic had never saved me, only will. I threw the solvent at Marcellin's voice. Glass shattered. Alcohol splashed. The antiseptic clean scent warped, burned. Marcellin swore, sharp, human. Rain moved like a storm given a body. There was a scuffle, a grunt, the sound of a gun scraping concrete. Marcellin fired once. The shot thundered, echoing under the bridge. Myert screamed. Rain hissed in pain. But Marcellin coughed now, choking, because the alcohol fumes were harsh and his perfect cleanliness was broken. His eyes would be watering. His breath would hitch. and I, blind, trembling, chemically burned, could still track him by scent, because he existed in my world in a way Rain didn't. "You're 3 steps from the pillar," I whispered, voice shaking. "Right side. Your heart is racing, you're angry." Marcellin snarled, "Shut up." His anger stank hot, acidic. Rain's breath came in harsh pulls. "Niall, left," I said, sudden and certain, because Marcellin's scent shifted in that direction. "He's left," Rain lunged. A sound like meat hitting stone. Marcellin grunted, wind knocked out. Then Rain's voice, low and savage, right in Marcellin's space. "You don't get to touch her." Marcellin laughed through pain, and it was ugly. "That's new." A wet sound, Rain's knife again. Marcellin made a noise that wasn't a word. He staggered back, breath turning ragged. He still had the gun. I heard the scrape of it as he raised it again. Time slowed, stretched thin. Rain was wounded. Meyert was shaking. I couldn't see the gun, but I could smell Marcellin's finger sweat spike, could hear his breath sharpen, could hear the tiny tremor of adrenaline that made men miss. He was going to shoot. I moved without thinking. I shoved myself between Marcellin's scent and Rain's voice. Rain shouted my name, raw, startled. Marcellin's breath caught, amused. "Oh, how noble." The gun fired. Pain punched my shoulder like a hammer. For a second I couldn't breathe. The world spun into soundless white, not sight, just a blankness where even scent vanished beneath shock. I fell. Hands caught me. Rain, his breath was ragged, frantic. "Niall." My mouth opened, but only a wheeze came out. My shoulder burned, heat spilling down my arm. Marcellin chuckled, stepping closer, gun raising again for the final shot. And then Meyert did something I didn't expect from a human woman who sold perfume and scolded me for skipping meals. Meyert screamed, not in fear, but in rage, and swung something heavy. Glass crashed. Marcellin cursed, stumbling back. The gun clattered. Meyert had hit him with a bottle, one of the big ones from my stock bag, probably, because the sound was deep, the impact brutal. My chest heaved. I tasted blood. Rain moved again, faster than pain, faster than reason. 2 wet sounds. Marcellin made a choking noise, then a gurgle. The antiseptic clean scent wavered, collapsed, replaced by the true smell beneath, blood and human waste and dying fear. Rain's hands pressed hard against my shoulder. "Stay with me." I tried to laugh, and it came out as a broken cough. "You're loud when you panic." "I don't," he snapped, but his voice cracked. Meyert was sobbing, breath hitching. "Oh my God, oh my God." Rain's voice turned sharp. "Meyert, focus, we need to move." "Move where?" she cried. Rain's breath shook. "Somewhere they can't reach." My mind, fogged with pain, clung to one thing. If I died, I wanted proof left behind. My notebook. I tried to speak. "My bag." Rain's voice softened, tight with urgency. "I have it." "Good." The underpass echoed with distant city life, indifferent. Above us, cars passed, unaware that 3 lives were cracking open under the bridge. Rain lifted me, careful, surprisingly gentle for a man built to kill. My head fell against his shoulder, and the warmth of him was a strange comfort in the cold. We moved, not gracefully, not cleanly, but alive. Rain, her blood was warm on my hands. The procedure had taken my scent, not my instincts. The sight of Niall, small, stubborn, shot because she had stepped into a bullet's path like her body, was the only shield she trusted, made something feral wake fully in me. I killed Marcellin without ceremony. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't justice. It was removal. He would not touch her again. He would not speak her name again. He would not call her a loose end like she was trash to be swept away. Meyert's courage had bought us seconds. Seconds were everything. I carried Niall up the river steps, away from the underpass, away from Severian's cooling body and Marcellin's blood. The night air hit us, cold and sharp, washing away the chemical stench. Niall's breath came in thin gasps against my neck. She didn't cry. That scared me more than screaming would have. Meiert followed, shaking, whispering prayers she probably didn't believe in. "Where are we going? Hospital?" "No," I said, "too visible." "But she's shot." Meiert's voice broke. "I know." My jaw clenched. "Do you have a first aid kit at the wine bar?" Meiert swallowed hard. "Yes, and a back room." We moved through side streets, avoiding light, avoiding main roads. I watched reflections in windows for tales. I listened for footsteps that matched ours. The consortium wouldn't stop with Marcellin. Marcellin had been a head, not the body. Severian had been a knife, not the hand. Somewhere, someone had ordered all of it. Niall murmured against my shoulder, voice weak. "Rain." "I'm here," I said immediately, because I couldn't stand the tremor in her tone. "Stay with me." Her fingers, cold, shaking, gripped my coat. "Don't let me be nothing." The words stabbed deep, because I knew she wasn't talking about death alone. She was talking about erasure. About being dismissed the way her pack had dismissed her, the way the consortium dismissed everyone who wasn't power. "You're not nothing," I said, harsh and sincere. "You're the only reason I'm still in myself." Meiert made a small, startled sound behind us, but she didn't argue. Maybe she finally understood this wasn't a mugging gone wrong. This was a world with rules she'd never been taught. The wine bar was closed, its metal gate down. Meiert fumbled with keys, hands trembling so badly the ring clinked against the lock. "Hurry," I snapped, then regretted it as she flinched. "I'm trying," she hissed back, furious through fear. The gate rattled open. We slipped inside. The bar smelled like old wood, wine, citrus peel, and cleaning solution. Familiar human comfort. A place where laughter usually lived. Tonight it was a shelter. Meiert led us down to the storage cellar. The air turned cooler, damp with stone and cork and earth. She punched in a keypad code with shaking fingers. A steel door clicked open. Inside was a small room with shelves and a table. I laid Niall down gently. Her face was pale, lips parted, breath shallow. The bruise on her cheek looked darker now. Blood soaked her coat at the shoulder. My hands shook as I tore fabric away to see the wound. It was through and through, high on the shoulder. Not clean, but not fatal if we stopped the bleeding and kept infection away. Meiert hovered white-faced. "What do I do?" "Get cloth," I ordered. "Alcohol, bandages, anything clean." Meiert moved, frantic, pulling supplies from shelves. Niall's hand groped across the table until it found my wrist. She gripped hard. "Don't disappear." I swallowed. "I can't disappear." "I'm holding you." Her mouth twitched faintly, almost a smile. "I can hear your lie." I froze. Then she whispered, voice thin, "You're scared." "Yes," I admitted, and the word tasted like blood. Her grip softened. "Good," she murmured. "Then you're real." Pain tightened my throat. I pressed cloth to her wound, applying pressure. She hissed, body tensing, then forced herself still, breathing through it. She was so brave it made me angry at the world. Meiert returned with supplies, hands steadier now that she had tasks. I cleaned the wound with alcohol. Niall's body jerked, a soft cry escaping her. I hated causing her pain, but I hated the alternative more. When the bleeding slowed, I bandaged her, tight and secure. Niall's breathing eased slightly. Her fingers still clung to me. Meiert sank onto a crate, shaking. "Who are you?" she whispered, eyes fixed on me like I was a nightmare that had stepped out of an alley into her life. I looked at her. Human, loyal, terrified, and still here. "I'm the reason she's in danger," I said. Meiert's laugh was brittle. "That doesn't answer anything." Niall's voice came, faint but steady. "He's also the reason I'm alive." Meiert's eyes flicked to Niall. "Niall, you can't be serious. He killed." "I know," Niall whispered. "But he's not lying about protecting me." Meiert's face twisted. "How would you know?" Niall's lips parted. "Because when he lies, his breath changes." I went still. Niall couldn't smell me, but she could read me anyway, the way she read the world, by tiny betrayals. Meyert stared between us, swallowing hard. So what now? Now the question was a door. We end it, I said. Meyert's voice rose. End what? There are organizations, assassins. You think you can just— I can, I said, and heard the cold conviction in my own tone. It didn't come from arrogance. It came from the fact that I no longer cared what the consortium did to me. They had already tried to erase me. Niall's hand tightened on my wrist. Rain, she whispered, warning. I looked down at her. They'll keep coming, Niall swallowed. Then we need proof, something that makes them stop. Proof, her notebook, her voice. My mind clicked through options with lethal clarity. Marcellin had a phone, I said. He called someone, he reported. If we can get into his communications. No, Meyert said immediately. No, absolutely not. You can't hack some secret murder group's phone. I can, Niall whispered. Both Meyert and I turned toward her voice. Niall's face was pale with pain, but her expression, what I could read of it, was sharp. Not hack, she corrected, but I can identify voices, breathing. If we get a recording, if we get names, if we get them speaking, Meyert's voice went shaky. Who would care? Niall's lips pressed together. A pack council, she said. There are werewolves in this city, not mine, not my old pack, but they exist. They have rules. They protect their own. Meyert stared. Werewolves, she whispered, like the word was a superstition. Niall didn't flinch. Yes. Meyert looked like she might faint. Then, oddly, she exhaled, shoulders slumping as if something in her finally made sense. That's why you always your nose, your allergies. Niall gave a weak, humorless laugh. I'm not allergic. Meyert pressed a hand to her mouth. Oh my God. I watched Meyert carefully. Human fear could turn into betrayal. But her scent tea, smoke, grief held stubborn loyalty under shock. She had picked up a bottle and hit Marcellin for Niall. That mattered. Where do we find a council? Meyert asked, voice small. Niall whispered, Rue des Halleges. There's a butcher shop that isn't just a butcher shop. I've smelled wolves there before. I blinked, surprised. She'd known and never said. Niall's mouth tightened. I didn't want to owe anyone. My chest tightened painfully. I understood that too well. Then we go there, I said. Niall's fingers squeezed my wrist once, a silent command. And you don't go alone. I met her unfocused gaze. You're wounded. I'm alive, she said, and the stubbornness in her tone made something warm flare inside me despite fear. And if you leave, I'll never hear you again. Meyert swallowed hard. I'm coming too. I looked at her. You don't have to. Meyert's voice steadied, anger hardening her fear into something useful. Yes, I do. They walked into my shop like they owned it. They shot her. They'll come back and kill me too if they want loose ends. So yes, I'm coming. Niall exhaled, shaky. Thank you, Meyert's voice broke. Don't thank me, just don't die. We rested only long enough for Niall's breath to stabilize. Then we moved again into the city's night, toward the place where wolves hid behind meat and knives and old rules. Niall the butcher's shop smelled like raw fat and iron and salt, layered over sawdust and cold stone. Beneath it all was the unmistakable musk of wolves, pack scent braided together with familiarity and hierarchy. My stomach clenched. Pack scent was a language I hadn't spoken in years. I kept my hand on Rain's sleeve, not because I needed guidance in this familiar kind of darkness, but because his emptiness was the only thing in this place that didn't demand something from me. A bell chimed as we entered. A voice called from behind the counter, rough and suspicious. We're closed. Meyert's breath trembled beside me. Rain's body went still, predatory, ready. I forced my voice steady. I need the council. Silence snapped tight. Then the air changed, someone approaching, sniffing, assessing. A low voice, older, with authority worn like a scar, spoke closer. Human shop girl, scentless alpha, and his breath caught. A blind Omega, my throat tightened. Yes, A pause, then softer, Nile Vesperine. My blood turned to ice. You know me. I know of you, the voice corrected. Exiled from the Ardrun Ridge Pack, they spoke of you like a warning. My hands curled into fists. The old humiliation flared, hot and sharp. I swallowed. I'm not here to beg for a den. I'm here because people are hunting me. They killed someone a week ago. They came tonight. A new voice, female, sharp, cut in. People, wolves? Men, I said, but one of them smelled like a wolf. Rain's voice rumbled beside me. A consortium handler and a consortium assassin. Butcher shop went very still. The air thickened with dominance. Alphas in the room, more than one straightened, sent sharpening in challenge. The older voice hardened. That name is not spoken lightly. Rain's emptiness seemed to irritate them. I felt it in the subtle shift of air, the slight edge to their breathing, as if their instincts couldn't categorize him and therefore wanted to destroy him. I stepped forward a fraction, placing myself not in front of him, but close enough that my presence made a statement. You can posture later, I said, voice shaking with pain and fury. They shot me. They killed in this city. They will keep killing because they think they can. The sharp female voice asked, What do you want from us? I forced air into my lungs. Sanctuary and a tribunal. I can identify the killer by breathing. I can identify voices. My shoulder throbbed and my words faltered. Rain's hand touched my elbow gently, steadying. I continued, swallowing down weakness. I have notes. Proof. Meyert's voice came out small. I saw them. I can testify, human testify, if someone tells me where and how without getting me killed. A low chuckle came from somewhere, not mocking, grim. The older voice said, Bring them. Hands guided us firm but not rough through a back door, downstairs into a room that smelled less like meat and more like leather and old paper. A council room. I sat carefully on a chair someone pulled out for me. My shoulders screamed. I clenched my jaw to keep from whimpering. Rain stayed close enough that I could hear his breath. The older alpha spoke again, closer now. I am Auberic Thorneville. The name was rare, heavy with old lineage. He continued, This is Counselor Asoria Merquin. And this, I heard a third presence shift, quiet, watchful, is our recorder. Nile Vesperine the exile was sitting before a council. My throat tightened. Auberic asked, Tell us what you know. I took a trembling breath and began. I told them about Rue Mornay, about the half-open door. The cough, the breathing, the tongue click. The way I'd fled and tried to pretend the city could swallow it. I told them about the alley attack, about the void that saved me, and then admitted he was sent to kill me. I told them about Marcellin and Severian and the underpass and the gunshot that tore my shoulder. When I finished, the room was silent except for the faint scratch of the recorder's pen. Counselor Asoria spoke, voice cool and cutting. You claim you can identify the killer by breath. Can you do so now? My stomach dropped. Now, Auberic's voice was calm. If you are telling truth, we can act. If you are mistaken, we must not start war with a shadow. War, the word made my mouth dry. Rain's voice rumbled beside me, controlled. Marcellin is dead. A pause, then Asoria's voice, intrigued. Dead. Yes, Rain said, by my hand. The council's air sharpened, dominance flaring. Auberic's tone stayed measured. Then your identification is convenient. Anger flared in me, hot enough to burn through pain. You think I did this for convenience? I snapped. I almost died. Meyert almost died. Rain, my voice broke. Rain is bleeding because of this. Silence. Then Auberic's voice softened just a fraction. Show us your proof. My trembling hands reached for my bag. Fingers fumbled, clumsy with pain. I pulled out my notebook, pressed it forward. The recorder took it, careful. Asoria's voice shifted. Raised dots, a code. It's mine, I whispered. But I can translate. They listened as I translated my own notes aloud. Times, locations, the sounds I'd memorized, the details of Marcellin's breathing and Severian's chemical scent bomb, Meyert's presence, Rain's call, the handler's threat. When I mentioned Severian by name, the room's scent changed. Wolves recognized that name too. Alberic asked slowly, "How do you know this consortium exists?" Rain answered, voice flat. "Because I was made by it." A pause. Then Asoria's tone sharpened. Made. Rain's emptiness seemed to fill the room with discomfort. He spoke anyway, as if he'd crossed a line and didn't care who watched. "They refined me, burned out my scent, used me as assassin." The council's silence turned heavy. Alberic said quietly, "A scentless alpha is an abomination." My stomach clenched. Rain's posture went rigid. I heard my own voice, shaky but fierce. "He's not an abomination, he's a person." The room snapped cold. Alberic's breath hissed softly. "Omega, mind your place." My old pack's words flashed in my mind like a bruise. Blind wolf, dead wolf, burden. I swallowed down the shaking and lifted my chin toward Alberic's voice. "My place is alive, and I'm sitting here bleeding because your city has a problem that doesn't care about your hierarchy." Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Asoria laughed once, short, sharp. "She's rude." Alberic's tone went dry. "Yes." Asoria's voice softened, a blade sheathed but still sharp. "And she's right." Alberic exhaled. "What do you propose, Nile Vesperine?" The use of my full name felt like acknowledgement, reluctant but real. I forced myself to think past fear. "You said you need not start war with a shadow. Then don't. Start with a head." Rain's breath deepened beside me. I continued, voice trembling but steady. "Marcellin was a head. Severian was a knife. There's someone above them, someone who orders." Meyert's voice came, shaky but firm. "They used phones, codes. There's money. There's always money." Asoria hummed. "Money leaves trails." I swallowed. "I can identify voices. If you can capture someone talking, if you can record their breathing, then you can name them." Alberic's tone turned thoughtful. "And your scentless alpha?" I felt Rain stiffen. I answered before he could. "He can get you close, they don't smell him." Alberic's breath was sharp. "We don't use abominations." My jaw clenched. "Then you lose." The room went still, shocked by my bluntness. I leaned forward slightly, pain flaring, and forced the words out anyway. "He is the only reason I'm here to speak. If you refuse him because he makes your instincts uncomfortable, then you deserve whatever the consortium does next." A pause that felt like a cliff edge. Then Alberic's voice, grudging and heavy. "Very well," he continued, "we will not welcome him, but we will use him." Rain's breath left him slowly, controlled. Asoria said, "Cool, we'll set a snare." Alberic's voice dropped. "And we will move tonight, before the consortium realizes which threads have snapped." My stomach rolled with fear. Then Rain's hand brushed mine, brief, grounding. In the council room, surrounded by wolves who judged by scent and power, the only thing that felt safe was the man who smelled like nothing at all. Rain, the council moved like a pack should, fast, decisive, coordinated by old instincts. They didn't trust me, but they didn't need to. They needed results. They set the snare using what Nile had given them: names, patterns, desperation. Marcellin's death would trigger a response. Someone would come to retrieve, to assess, to clean. The consortium hated loose ends. They hated mess. Severian's body under the bridge was a mess. They would send a cleaner. Alberic had people watching the underpass area, watching hospital admissions, watching street cameras through contacts. Asoria had someone in the city's human administration, quiet influence that smelled like ink and compromise. And Nile, wounded, pale, sat with Meyert in a back room of the butcher shop, listening, resting, refusing to be put aside. I watched her when she thought I was. Her hands trembled sometimes, not from weakness, but from the effort of staying upright through pain. Her jaw set when someone spoke to her like she was lesser. Her head tilted toward sounds the way other wolves tilted their heads toward scent. She was dangerous, not because she could fight, because she could name truth in a world built on secrecy. Audiobook finally gave the order. We moved to a warehouse district near the river where the council believed the consortium maintained a drop site. Not a headquarters, consortiums didn't keep hearts in one place, but a node. A place where cleaners gathered evidence, passed money, exchanged instructions. The plan was simple: draw the cleaner in, take them alive if possible, record their voice, force a call up the chain. The part of me that still belonged to the consortium whispered that this was suicide. The part of me that was waking in Nile's gravity didn't care. We set up in darkness. Wolves took rooftops and alley mouths. I stayed near the center, hidden in plain sight because I didn't trigger anyone's nose. Nile came too, against every objection, wrapped in a coat that smelled strongly of her own masking blend, tobacco, soap, human warmth, meant to dull the beacon of Omega biology. Myert stayed with her, hand on her elbow, jaw clenched. I hated it, not her presence, the danger of it, but Nile insisted, voice thin with pain and fury. If you capture someone, I need to hear them. I need to identify. Otherwise, you'll argue among yourselves until dawn and call it caution. Asoria had studied her for a long moment, then nodded. She's right. So Nile was here. And because she was here, I was here, closer than I should have been, my body on edge, my knife ready, my mind listening for the faintest betrayal in the dark. Footsteps came at midnight. One person, slow, confident, not Severian. Severian's gait had been lighter. This was heavier, older. Nile's head turned instantly toward the sound. Her fingers tightened on Myert's arm. Audiobook signaled silence with a hand gesture. The man entered the warehouse yard. He spoke into a phone, voice low. Marcellin is down, Severian too. A pause, then, yes, I'll clean. His breath was steady. Too steady. Nile's head tilted. Her voice was barely a whisper. Not Marcellin, not Severian. Audiobook didn't move. He waited. The cleaner continued, walking deeper into the yard, toward a shadowed loading dock where council wolves had placed Severian's knife as bait, along with a small, blood-stained cloth. The cleaner crouched, picked up the cloth, inhaled. A wolf would have red blood history in that scent. A human would have gagged. This man simply assessed, clinical. He spoke into the phone again. Yes, the asset has gone feral, the Omega is alive. A pause. Then, softer, permission to deploy the null. Null. The word made my spine tight. There were rumors in the consortium of a failsafe, a device or drug used to shut down refined assets if they became inconvenient. A way to turn living weapons back into objects. Nile's hand found my sleeve. Her grip was trembling. Rain, she whispered, as if she felt the threat even without understanding the word. The voice on the other end of the phone must have answered. The cleaner murmured, understood. He slipped the phone away and reached into his coat. Audiobook moved, a shadow erupting. Wolves sprang from darkness, fast and silent. 2 betas pinned the cleaner's arms. Audiobook himself seized the man's throat and slammed him against the dock wall. The cleaner didn't scream. He smiled faintly, bloodless. Audiobook growled, "Who do you report to?" The cleaner's smile widened. "You won't like the answer." Asoria stepped forward, voice like ice. "We don't need to like it." She nodded toward Nile. "Let her listen." Nile stepped closer, Myert clutching her elbow. My body went rigid with protective instinct. The cleaner's eyes flicked toward Nile, sharp. He knew what she was. He spoke, suddenly louder to me. "Asset Rain, return." The word return was weighted, coded. Something in my skull seemed to tighten, a phantom pressure like an old leash yanked. I staggered half a step before I could stop it. Nile gasped softly. Her hand tightened on my sleeve as if she could anchor me against invisible commands. What did he do? The cleaner watched me with interest. It still works, he murmured. Asoria's voice sharpened. Explain. The cleaner's smile didn't reach his eyes. He's conditioned. He hears certain phrases, he obeys. That's refinement. That's what makes him valuable. Abarak's grip tightened on the cleaner's throat. And the null, the cleaner's eyes gleamed. A better leash, you can turn him off. My blood went cold, not with fear of death, but with the horrifying thought of being shut down, emptied even of the fragment Nile had resurrected. Nile's voice came, trembling with fury. Who do you report to? The cleaner laughed softly. An Omega asking questions. How quaint. Nile didn't flinch. Answer. For a moment, the cleaner's breath hitched. It was tiny, but Nile's head tilted as if she'd seen a flash of light. Say the name, she demanded, voice raw. Say it and breathe, Asoria murmured, impressed despite herself. She's baiting. Abarak snarled, name. The cleaner exhaled slowly, then said, voice smooth, Preter Vogyr. The name landed heavy, unfamiliar. Nile went very still. Then she whispered, certain, that's him. Meyert's voice shook. Him who? Nile's throat worked. The voice on the phone, the one I heard wash his hands, it was Marcellin. It was higher, colder, she swallowed. Preter Vogyr. I recognize the way he breathes when he thinks no one can touch him. The yard went silent. Asoria's voice turned grim. Vogyr is not a rumor. Abarak's tone sharpened. He sits above 3 cities. The cleaner smiled, blood at the corner of his mouth. And now he'll burn you for this. Abarak slammed his head against the wall hard enough to make teeth click. The cleaner sagged, still conscious but dazed. Asoria turned toward me. Rain, can you get us to Vogyr? The old Rain would have said no, would have protected the consortium's structure because it was the only structure he had. The new crack in my chest, the part that had warmed near Nile, answered without hesitation. Yes, I said. Nile's hand squeezed my sleeve, and in that small pressure, I chose my side completely. Nile Preter Vogyr. The name tasted like cold metal. The council moved fast after that, but I was aware of everything through pain haze. Meyert's hand steadying me, Rain's body close, the council's scent flaring with purpose, a pack deciding it would bite back. They took the cleaner alive, bound and gagged, and brought him to the council room. There, under old rules, they forced him to place a call. Not to confess to human police. Not to beg mercy. To open a door. They recorded everything, his voice, his breath, the cadence of the person who answered. I listened. My world narrowed to sound. The call connected. A voice answered, low and irritated. Report. I froze. That voice, older than Marcellin's, smoother with the faintest rasp like a healed scar in the throat, matched the man I'd heard a week ago. The hand washer, the calm murderer above the bakery. My skin prickled. That's him, I whispered, and the certainty made me nauseous. The cleaner spoke, forced. Severian and Marcellin are dead. The council is involved. Asset Rain has compromised. A pause. Then the voice, Vogyr, exhaled slowly, controlled, the sound of a man deciding which city to burn first. Then we remove the asset. My stomach dropped. Rain's breath changed beside me tight, restrained. Vogyr continued, voice calm. Deploy the null. The cleaner's eyes widened with fear, even gagged, as if he had just realized he'd helped pull a lever he didn't understand. Nile me had heard the phrase before, now twice, and my body trembled. Vogyr said, almost casually, and bring me the Omega. I want to hear her describe a scentless alpha. Rain's hand clenched into a fist. I heard his knuckles crack. Abarak ended the call by crushing the cleaner's phone under his boot. Silence slammed down. Then Abarak's voice, heavy with authority. We move on Vogyr tonight. Asoria's voice was cool. If we wait, he disappears. Meyert whispered, horrified, "You're going to start a war." Abaric's tone was grim. "It has already started." Rain turned slightly toward me. I felt his presence like a wall. "Niall, Meyert, you stay here." My chest tightened. "No," Rain's breath hitched. "Niall, if you go and they deploy the null," I whispered, voice shaking, "what happens to you?" Rain didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. I swallowed, throat burning. "Then I'm coming. Because if your body stops listening to you, I need to be there to pull you back." Rain's voice went rough. "You don't know if you can." "I do," I said, and it was pure emotion, pure stubborn refusal to lose the only person who had made my world feel less lonely. "Because you're not nothing to me." Rain went very still. Then quietly, "That's dangerous." "Yes," I whispered. Meyert's hand tightened on my elbow. "Niall, you're injured." I laughed once, breathless. "So is he." Abaric's voice cut in, grudging. "The Omega's hearing is useful," Asoria hummed, "and her presence unbalances the refined asset in our favor." It was a clinical way to describe what felt like love trying to be born in the worst circumstances. But I didn't care what they called it. We moved. They took us to a building that smelled like new concrete and old money, hidden behind a legitimate front, offices, security, polished surfaces. Voggier's node. Rain knew the way in because he'd been trained to know where doors were and how to open them. Inside, the air was cold, recycled. Cameras hummed. Lights buzzed faintly. I tracked by sound and scent, following Rain's hand on my elbow, Meyert close behind, council wolves flanking us like shadows. We didn't talk. Talking wasted breath. We reached a corridor where the air smelled sharply of antiseptic and ozone. Rain stopped so abruptly I almost walked into him. "Niall," I reminded myself, "breathe." Rain whispered, close to my ear, "This is where they did it." Did what? But I knew, refinement, the procedure that burned him hollow. My throat tightened. "They hurt you here." Rain's breath was a slow, controlled exhale. "Yes." A sound came from ahead, a door opening, footsteps approaching, unhurried. A voice spoke, warm with false civility. "You came." Voggier, my skin crawled, the calm murderer. Rain stepped forward. Abaric's wolves shifted, dominance flaring. Voggier chuckled. "Pack council in my corridor." How nostalgic. I couldn't see him, but I smelled him now. Expensive cologne layered over antiseptic, the scent of a man who tried to smell like civilization to hide the blood underneath. He continued, voice smooth. "And you brought my asset." Rain's voice was low and deadly. "I'm not yours." Voggier sighed theatrically. "Of course you are." Then he spoke a phrase, soft, coded, meant for Rain alone. "Return to null." Rain's body jerked as if yanked by invisible strings. His breath stuttered. His hand fell from my elbow. The sudden absence was terrifying. "Rain," I whispered, voice breaking. He didn't answer. His heartbeat, usually slow, began to shift, not faster, but strange, as if his body was trying to fall into a mechanical rhythm that wasn't his. My chest tightened with panic. "Rain, listen to me." Voggier laughed softly. "Fascinating. The Omega thinks she can anchor a refined alpha. Adorable." I stepped forward blindly, ignoring the council's murmurs, ignoring Meyert's grip trying to hold me back. My hand found Rain's wrist. His skin was cold with sweat. "Rain," I whispered, mouth close to his ear. Tap your finger, give me your sound." Nothing, my throat burned. I changed tactics, the way I did when a scent didn't work. I used memory. "You smell like silence after thunder," I whispered fiercely. "Do you hear me? You are not nothing. You are here, with me." For a second, just a second, Rain's breath hitched, as if something inside him recognized the words and clawed toward them. Voggier's tone sharpened. "Increase the null." A device somewhere hummed louder, a low frequency that made my teeth ache. The air smelled of ozone and hot wires. Rain's shoulders went slack, like a puppet's strings cut. Panic rose in me, sharp enough to choke. Then I did the only thing left. I spoke his name the way you speak to a drowning person. Rain, I said, voice cracking. Your heartbeat. It's mine to hear, come back. His chest rose, one deep inhale, then another. His fingers twitched faintly. Abarak snarled, impressed despite himself. Asoria's voice cut like a whip. Break the device. A wolf lunged, smashing something against the wall. Sparks flew. The hum died. The corridor plunged into emergency darkness, low red lights, alarms beginning to wail. In the sudden change, Vogyr's calm cracked. He swore, sharp and human. And Rain, free for the first time in that moment, moved. I heard him, a storm unleashed. Bodies collided, a gun fired, wolves growled, someone screamed. I stood trembling, useless eyes staring into red haze and tried to listen for Rain's breath among the chaos. I found it ragged, alive. Then Vogyr's footsteps retreated, fast now, fear scent blooming. He was running. My head snapped toward him. Right, I gasped. He's going right, he's limping. Rain moved like a shadow toward my voice, then past it, following my direction. Abarak's wolves pursued. Alarms wailed louder. Doors slammed. The building shook with chaos. In the dark, in the noise, in the very conditions the consortium had tried to weaponize against us, I felt something fierce and bright ignite in my chest. They had made Rain empty so he could be invisible. But emptiness couldn't hold him anymore, not when I had named him into being. Rain, Vogyr's null command, had nearly taken me. For a moment, I'd felt myself sliding back into the procedure's dead quiet, back into obedience so complete it wasn't even a choice. And then Niall's voice, shaking, furious, tender, had cut through it like light through smoke. Not logic, not orders, not training, her description, her naming. Silence after thunder. It had done something the consortium never understood. It had made me want to remain myself. In the emergency red, Vogyr ran, limping toward a private exit. 2 guards moved with him, guns raised. I couldn't smell them. I didn't need to. I saw their silhouettes. I heard their breath. And I had Niall behind me, anchoring me with her listening, her directions. A guard fired. The shot cracked past my ear. I slammed into him, driving him into the wall, wrenching the gun away and tossing it down the corridor. I didn't kill him. Killing was easy. I was saving my blade for the man who thought he could erase people. Vogyr reached a door and slammed a palm against a sensor. It beeped, denied someone had cut power. Asoria's wolf had done that. Vogyr whirled, fury and fear mixing into something ugly. You ruin everything, he spat. I stepped closer, knife low, voice calmer than I felt. You ruined me. Vogyr's lip curled. You were always a weapon, you were grateful. Niall's voice came from behind, trembling with pain and rage. He was a person, Vogyr laughed. Omega sentimentality. Disgusting. He tried another phrase, another leash command. I felt it tug at the edges of my mind like hooks. But it didn't sink. Because Niall's hand, small, warm, found the back of my coat, and that contact was real in a way commands were not. I moved, fast. I drove Vogyr into the wall, forearm across his throat. His cologne hit my nose as nothing, still nothing, but I saw his eyes widen, saw the first real panic in him. I can't smell you, he rasped, choking. That's why you're valuable. I'm not valuable, I said low. I'm done. He scrabbled for something at his belt, maybe a syringe, maybe a trigger. I caught his wrist and twisted until bone cracked. He screamed then, finally loud. The sound was ugly and satisfying. Abarak's heavy steps came up behind me. Asoria's voice was cold. Alive if possible. Alive, tribunal, rules. I held Vogyr pinned, breathing hard, blood soaking my shirt where Severian's blade had bitten earlier, my side throbbing. The urge to end it, clean and final, burned in me. Then I heard Niall's breath, thin with pain. I remembered her saying she wanted proof, not just survival. So I forced myself to obey a different rule, hers. I didn't kill Vogyr. I dragged him, half-conscious, toward the council wolves. Alberic took him with a grip like iron. Asoria leaned close to Vagyr's ear and murmured something that made his breath hitch in fear. The corridor's alarms continued, but the building's heart was already dying. Wolves swarmed it, cutting wires, confiscating files, taking devices. Myrt Human, trembling, held Nile upright, whispering encouragement with fierce loyalty. Nile's voice found me shaky. "Rain," I turned toward her. I moved to her slowly, carefully, as if sudden movement might break whatever fragile thread held us together. She reached out, searching air until her fingers found my face. Her touch was trembling, reverent, furious. "You came back," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "I'm here." Her thumb brushed my cheekbone, a gesture too intimate for a war zone and yet perfectly placed, because it reminded me I was not just a blade. She exhaled shakily. "Good." Then her mouth quirked. "You're bleeding a lot." I made a sound that might have been laughter if my body remembered how. "You got shot." "Yes," she said, and there was dark humor in it, pure stubborn Omega defiance. "So we're even." Myrt let out a hysterical, breathless laugh beside her, then immediately covered it with a sob. "You're both insane." Nile's hand slid down to my wrist, finding my pulse. She listened to it with her fingertips, the way she listened to the world. "It's steady," she whispered. My throat tightened painfully. "Because you're here." Nile's face softened, and in that softness I felt something I hadn't felt in years, the possibility of peace. We left the building before dawn, Vogyr bound and gagged, the consortium's node gutted, their communications compromised, their power in this city broken by wolves who were tired of being hunted like livestock. It wasn't the end of all shadows, but it was the end of this one. And in the gray edge of morning, as the city's scents shifted from night's sweat to day's coffee and bread, Nile leaned against me and whispered, exhausted, "I want to go home." Home. The word hit like warmth. I looked down at her pale face, at Myrt's trembling but steady grip, at the council wolves moving with grim satisfaction. Then I said, quietly, "We'll build one." Nile weeks later, my workshop smelled like sunlight. Not literally, sunlight had no scent, but the way warmth sinks into wood, the way dust motes would look if I could see them, the way morning air tastes cleaner when you've survived the night. My shoulder healed into a scar that pulled when I lifted my arm. Rain's wounds healed too, though he pretended they hadn't hurt, because alphas were ridiculous even when they were broken. The consortium's node in the city stayed dismantled. Vogyr disappeared into pack justice, quiet, old, final. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. I could smell the change in the city's wolves when they visited my shop now. Less tension, less hunted fear. Alberic Thorneville never apologized for calling Rain an abomination, but he did something stranger and more meaningful. He acknowledged us. He granted us protection under council law, not because he liked me, not because he trusted Rain, but because he respected results, and because, I suspected, Asoria Merquin had told him in private that a blind Omega with a perfect nose was an asset worth keeping close. I hated being called an asset, but I liked being alive. Myrt kept working with me, though now she watched the door like she expected monsters to walk in. Sometimes she did it with humor, sharp, human, and sometimes with trembling hands. Rain had quietly installed better locks and cameras. He didn't announce it. He just did it because protection was his language now. And then there was the other thing, the quieter war. Rain still didn't smell. He never would. The procedure had been irreversible. The council's healers had confirmed it with grim faces and clinical words. Rain had gone still when they said it, as if bracing for disappointment. I took his hand under the table and squeezed, because I didn't need Scent to know what he felt. His fingers had trembled. Tonight, in my workshop, I set out glass vials with careful precision. My fingers moved over them like prayer beads. Rain sat across from me, shoulders too broad for my small chair, posture controlled as always, but his breath softer now in my space. I spoke quietly, because this moment deserved gentleness. "Close your eyes," Rain's voice rumbled. "Why?" "Because I said so," I replied, and heard the smile in my own tone before I could stop it. A pause. Then he obeyed. The fact that he still yielded to me in this small way, sent warmth through my chest that had nothing to do with Omega instinct and everything to do with choice. I uncapped the bottle I'd been building for weeks. Not a perfume meant to attract clients. A perfume meant to anchor a man who felt like absence. My hands trembled as I lifted it. "Hold out your wrist," I said. Rain did. I dabbed the scent onto his skin, one small touch, then another. The aroma rose slowly, unfolding in layers the way a story unfolds when you let it breathe. First, ozone and mineral air, thunder's edge. Then a soft, dark resin, labdanum, warm like a hand in the small of your back. Then vetiver, damp earth after rain. And finally, a whisper of cedar and smoke, not harsh, not dirty, but comforting, like a fire-banked hearth in a house that expects you. Rain inhaled, habit reflex, then stopped, because smelling himself was impossible. But scent wasn't only for the nose. It clung to skin. It altered the air around him. It gave the world something to notice. Meiert stood in the doorway, quiet, holding her breath like she knew this was sacred in a strange way. Rain opened his eyes. "What is it?" he asked, voice low, careful, like he was afraid to break it with the wrong word. I swallowed, throat tight. "You," I whispered, "as I know you." Rain looked down at his wrist, then back toward my face as if he could see past my blind eyes into something truer. He spoke softly. "It's not real." My chest tightened, not with hurt, but with understanding. "Neither are my eyes," I said. "And yet I still know where you are." Rain's breath hitched. I reached across the table and took his hand, guiding his fingers to the bottle. "This is your scent," I said simply. "Not because your body made it, because I did, because I can, because you exist to me." Rain's throat worked. For a moment he didn't speak. Then a sound left him, rough, startled, disbelieving, a laugh. It wasn't loud, it wasn't polished, it was real. My whole body went still because I didn't need sight to understand how rare that sound was. I tilted my head, listening to it like it was music. "Oh," I whispered, smiling despite the tears that burned behind useless eyes. "That's what your smile sounds like." Rain's voice broke on my name. "Nile." I squeezed his hand. "I'm here." He stood suddenly, chair scraping, and I tensed on instinct, then relaxed as his hands, careful, warm, found my face. He didn't touch me like a predator. He touched me like a man asking permission without words. I leaned into it, exhaling shakily, because I'd been strong for so long that softness felt like another kind of bravery. Rain whispered, close. "You made me someone." I swallowed. "You were always someone. They just tried to convince you otherwise." His forehead rested against mine, and for a moment the world narrowed to breath and warmth and the new scent on his wrist threading into the air like a promise. Meiert sniffed loudly from the doorway. "If you two are going to be dramatic, do it after you eat," she said, voice thick with tears and annoyance. "I made soup." I laughed, real laughter, surprised by how easy it was now. Rain's chest vibrated with another rough chuckle. "Yes," he murmured. "We'll eat." He took my hand, not to guide me like a burden, to walk with me like an equal. We left the workshop together, the scent of his perfume trailing behind us, not natural, not biological, not pack-given. Chosen. And when the door closed and the city's noise faded into the background, I realized something with a sudden, quiet certainty. A blind wolf wasn't a dead wolf. A blind wolf just needed different light.